Beneath layers of stone, deeper than human history can fathom, lies a chapter of Earth's past shrouded in mystery, the Jurassic period. It was an age when titanic creatures roamed continents still drifting apart, when lush, alien forests whispered in the wind, and seas teemed with predators unlike anything alive today. We know much about its giants, the towering sauropods, the razor-toothed hunters. But what about the enigmas science still cannot fully explain? Why do certain fossil beds, scattered from the deserts of Palestine to the icy reaches of Antarctica, preserve entire herds as if frozen in an instant? What forces triggered sudden shifts in climate, reshaping life on land and sea without warning? And what secrets lie hidden in the bones themselves? Traces of diseases, behaviors, or perhaps connections to lineages we never knew existed. This is not just a journey into prehistory. It is a descent into a world both familiar and impossibly strange, where every rock could conceal a revelation. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into the unsolved mysteries of the Jurassic. High in the arid hills of western Colorado, the late summer sun bleaches the rock until it glows pale gold. Sparse tufts of grass cling to the dusty soil, their roots gripping at the edge of a vast geological story millions of years in the making. Here, in the Morrison Formation, an ancient layer of sediment stretching across much of the American West, fossilized remnants of a lost world have lain hidden for over 150 million years. It was in this very terrain, during the late 19th century, that one of paleontology's most tantalizing mysteries first emerged: the case of Amphicoelias Fragillimus. The year was 1878. Edward Drinker Cope, a towering figure of the so-called Bone Wars, received reports of an extraordinary discovery near Cannon City. A single vertebrae, so large it defied belief, was unearthed from the Morrison Formation. Cope, known for his meticulous yet sometimes hurried work, described the bone as belonging to a sauropod of unprecedented proportions. By his measurements, the creature's length might have exceeded 50 meters, dwarfing even the mighty Argentinosaurus. Its name, Amphicoelias Fragillimus, reflected both its hollow, delicate bone structure and its colossal scale. But then, the specimen vanished. The only evidence that the bone ever existed lies in Cope's detailed notes, sketches, and measurements. The fossil itself was reportedly fragile, so brittle that it may have crumbled to dust during transport or storage. Others have suggested it was misplaced, lost among the chaotic collections of the era. And so, the largest dinosaur ever recorded exists only on paper. The absence of the bone has left paleontologists with a tantalizing question. Was Cope's measurement accurate, or had he, intentionally or not, exaggerated the find in the heat of rivalry with his nemesis, Othniel Charles Marsh? In the decades that followed, scholars revisited Cope's figures with skepticism. Some argued that the proportions were simply too extreme to be plausible. Scaling from the vertebra, the animal's mass would have been immense, perhaps even biologically unsustainable. Muscles, circulation, and bone strength would have been pushed to their limits. Could a creature of such size have moved efficiently, or even survived long enough to grow that large? Mainstream explanations lean toward the possibility of error. Perhaps Cope misread his measurements, or perhaps the fossil's preservation had distorted its true size. Without the physical specimen, there is no way to confirm. Yet not all are satisfied with such caution. A handful of researchers have suggested that Amphicoelias Fragillimus may indeed have existed, but as part of an evolutionary experiment now lost to time. The Jurassic world was a place of lush vegetation, high oxygen levels, and abundant resources, conditions that could, in theory, support giants beyond our modern imagination. If so, the size discrepancy may not be a mistake, but a glimpse into the upper limits of dinosaur evolution. In this view, the fossil's disappearance is not proof against its existence, but rather a tragic loss of irreplaceable data. More speculative voices push further. They point to isolated accounts of similarly large sauropod bones from disparate locations, fragmentary fossils in South America, Morocco, even the deserts of Palestine, suggesting that extreme gigantism may have been more widespread than currently believed. Could Amphicoelias fragillimus have been one of many giant lineages, erased by a shift in climate, food availability, or an event we have yet to identify? These theories remain unproven, yet they keep the conversation alive. And then there are the fringe interpretations, the ones whispered at the edges of paleontological debate. Some suggest that the fossil's disappearance was too convenient, that perhaps it was intentionally removed or destroyed to avoid upending established scientific models of dinosaur physiology. Others venture even further, weaving the vertebra into speculative ideas about ancient Earth's gravity, atmospheric density, or the influence of catastrophic cosmic events. These theories often lack the empirical grounding demanded by science, yet they capture the imagination, offering possibilities that blur the line between evidence and myth. Still, the most enduring question remains painfully simple. What happened to the bone? In a world where countless fossils survive in private collections, museum basements, and forgotten storage rooms, it is not impossible that a mislabeled crate could one day yield the missing vertebra. But as each decade passes, the likelihood diminishes. The bone may have been destroyed by exposure to moisture, mishandling, or simply the fragility of its structure, its Fragillimus nature living up to its name. Meanwhile, the debate over Amphicoelias fragillimus's true size continues to ripple through paleontology. It is a reminder of both the grandeur and the fragility of our understanding of deep time. A single object, now lost, could redefine the boundaries of what we know about life in the Jurassic. Without it, we are left with questions that hover between the possible and the impossible, like a shadow cast by something we cannot see. Perhaps that is the quiet power of this mystery. It forces us to confront the limits of the fossil record, the imperfection of human preservation, and the vast gaps in our knowledge of Earth's ancient past. For all our modern technology, we are still at the mercy of chance discoveries and the stubborn silence of stone. Somewhere beneath our feet, the answers may still lie buried, waiting for the right eyes, the right tools, the right moment. And so, we are left to wonder, was Amphicoelias fragillimus truly the largest creature to ever walk the earth, or simply the largest legend in paleontology? Until the ground yields its secrets once more, the answer will remain locked in the Jurassic, where time guards its mysteries well. The morning sun hangs low over the red rock canyons of the American West, casting long shadows across the weathered cliffs of the Morrison Formation. Here, in this layered tapestry of ancient sediments, time itself feels almost visible. Bands of earth compressed by millions of years, each one holding whispers of a world that no human eye ever saw. It is among these rocks that paleontologists have unearthed one of the Jurassic's most iconic creatures, Stegosaurus. Known for its distinctive silhouette, a row of towering leaf-shaped plates rising along its back, this herbivore has long stood as a symbol of prehistoric life. And yet, despite over a century of study, the true purpose of those plates remains a mystery that refuses to settle. When Stegosaurus was first described in 1877, its plates puzzled scientists. At a glance, they seem impractical. Thin, flat structures made of bone, anchored in the skin rather than the spine, and too fragile to serve as heavy armor. Some early reconstructions even placed them flat along the animal's back like overlapping shingles, an arrangement later abandoned as new fossil evidence emerged. Today, the most common depiction shows the plates in two staggered rows, rising like the ridges of a living fortress. But why did nature design them this way? The mainstream explanations are well known. Many paleontologists suggest the plates played a role in thermoregulation, acting like natural solar panels, absorbing heat in the cool morning and radiating excess warmth in the afternoon. Microscopic analysis of fossilized plates reveals a dense network of blood vessels, lending credibility to the idea. Yet, even this function raises questions. If temperature control was their primary role, why adopt such a visually conspicuous form? Why make the plates so large, so noticeable? Nature often hides functional organs beneath skin or scales. Why put these on full display? Another widely accepted theory is that the plates served as a form of visual display, either to attract mates or to intimidate rivals and predators. In this view, the plates may have been brightly colored in life, flushed with blood to create striking patterns. Modern analogies can be found in the frills of lizards or the plumage of birds, which are used to signal strength or readiness to breed. This possibility draws support from the fact that Stegosaurus lived in a world filled with large predators, creatures like Allosaurus and Ceratosaurus, where intimidation could mean the difference between life and death. Still, questions remain. Did these plates evolve primarily for show, or was the display a secondary benefit of a structure built for another purpose? Some researchers suggest a hybrid explanation, that the plates performed multiple functions at once. They may have helped regulate temperature, deter predators, and communicate within the species, serving as a versatile adaptation in a harsh and competitive environment. This multifunctional hypothesis is appealing, yet it remains difficult to test with the incomplete fossil record we have. And then there are the more speculative ideas, lingering at the edges of academic debate. A few have proposed that the plates may have had sensory capabilities, perhaps detecting vibrations or shifts in air pressure, though no clear evidence has been found to support this. Others suggest they could have been used in species recognition, allowing members of Stegosaurus herds to identify one another from a distance across open Jurassic plains. More fringe theories wander further still. Some enthusiasts have speculated that the plates, when aligned in two rows, could have amplified sound or acted as resonators, producing low-frequency vibrations, perhaps as a means of long-distance communication. While this idea is largely unsupported by current anatomical evidence, it reflects the allure of thinking about dinosaurs not just as static skeletons, but as living, breathing creatures interacting with their environment in complex ways. Even more unconventional proposals lean toward behavioral functions we can barely imagine. Could the plates have played a role in mating rituals far more elaborate than simple visual signaling? Could they have shifted position slightly in life, flexing or angling for emphasis? While most paleontologists dismiss these possibilities as unlikely, they serve to remind us how much about dinosaur biology remains locked beyond our reach. Occasionally, discoveries in unexpected places reignite the debate. Fossils from outside North America, fragmentary remains in Portugal, Morocco, and even reports of isolated Stegosaurian material from the Middle East near the deserts of Palestine hint that relatives of Stegosaurus carried similar plate-like structures. If these plates evolved independently in multiple species, it could suggest that their function was fundamental and highly advantageous, rather than a random flourish of evolution. But without complete skeletons, such connections remain speculative. Part of the challenge lies in the very nature of the fossil record. Plates are often found detached from the rest of the skeleton, their arrangement in life inferred from careful comparison and modern modeling. Soft tissues, which could reveal patterns of skin covering or pigmentation, are almost never preserved. The living Stegosaurus, with its possible colors, vascular patterns, and dynamic presence, remains hidden behind a wall of stone and time. In museums, the reconstructed skeletons stand silently, their plates rising in ordered rows like the spines of some ancient armored ship. Visitors gaze up, awed by their size and strangeness. Yet what they see is not the full story. It is an educated reconstruction, a best guess drawn from incomplete evidence. The real animal under the Jurassic sun was almost certainly more vibrant, more complex, and more dynamic than we can yet prove. As the light fades over the Morrison Formation, the rust-red cliffs glow briefly before slipping into shadow. The wind moves through the dry grass, carrying with it the same restless whisper that has stirred over these rocks for millions of years. The plates of Stegosaurus, so distinctive and so enigmatic, remain frozen in our imaginations, symbols of a question that has no final answer. Were they tools for survival, signals in a silent language, or something we have yet to even consider? In the end, the truth may lie buried still, waiting for that one fossil, preserved with skin impressions, perhaps even traces of color, that could illuminate the purpose behind nature's design. Until then, we are left with the shapes, the shadows, and the silence, wondering what the plates of Stegosaurus might truly have meant to the creature that bore them. Far from shore, where the waves deepen into the open blue and sunlight fades into a muted haze, an ancient shape once glided in silence. Its long, serpentine neck cut through the water with an elegance that seems almost impossible for such a massive creature. This was the realm of the Plesiosaurs, marine reptiles of the Jurassic seas whose design still puzzles scientists to this day. Fossils scattered across the world, from the cliffs of England to the arid expanses of Morocco and even the windswept coastlines near Palestine, tell us they were apex hunters of their time. Yet the most striking feature of many plesiosaur species, their extraordinarily elongated necks, remains one of paleontology's most enduring enigmas. The structure itself is a marvel. Some plesiosaurs, like Elasmosaurus, had necks containing over 70 individual vertebrae, more than twice as many as in a giraffe, yet far more flexible. In reconstructions, these necks stretch out gracefully, sometimes longer than the rest of the animal's body combined. But this elegance comes with questions. In the turbulent waters of the Jurassic seas, such a long neck might seem like a liability, offering drag, vulnerability to predators, and potential difficulty in generating powerful bursts of speed. So why did evolution favor this design? Mainstream explanations often center on feeding strategies. One of the most widely accepted ideas is that plesiosaurs used their necks to extend their reach while keeping their large muscular bodies at a distance from prey. By holding themselves still, hidden in the water column, they could strike without alarming fish or cephalopods that might flee at the approach of a bulkier shape. This would allow them to hunt with precision in schools of small prey or among clusters of ammonites. Another theory proposes that the long neck acted almost like a fishing rod, sweeping in wide arcs to capture multiple prey items in a single movement. This idea gains some support from biomechanical studies, which show that the neck could bend both vertically and horizontally, though likely not in the extreme snake-like coils once imagined in early illustrations. Still, its range of motion remains a subject of debate. Was it agile enough for rapid strikes, or was it better suited to slow, deliberate positioning? Some paleontologists suggest the neck may have allowed plesiosaurs to feed at different depths without moving their whole bodies. This would be especially useful in coastal waters, where they could keep their main bulk submerged while raising their heads into shallower zones to catch unsuspecting prey. Others propose a vertical hunting strategy, with the body hovering deep below while the head reached upward into sunlit layers, striking at fish silhouetted against the surface. Yet these ideas face challenges. A neck so long and slender would likely have been weak in twisting or high-speed maneuvers, raising doubts about whether it could truly deliver rapid killing blows. Fossil evidence also shows that not all plesiosaurs had such extreme neck proportions, suggesting that the adaptation may have evolved for very specific ecological niches rather than as a universal advantage. Beyond mainstream science, more speculative theories emerge. Some researchers have considered whether the long neck might have been used in complex social or mating displays, similar to how modern birds use exaggerated physical features. If so, the neck may have been less about efficiency and more about communication, an evolutionary trade-off where visual impact outweighed pure function. Fringe interpretations drift even further from accepted models. A few have imagined plesiosaurs using their necks to probe into crevices, sea caves, or coral-like structures, perhaps hunting prey hidden from other predators. Others go so far as to speculate that certain plesiosaurs might have lifted their heads above the water's surface more often than we think, an idea that inevitably invites comparisons to persistent myths of long-necked lake creatures in modern folklore. While such associations remain unproven and largely outside scientific consensus, they reveal how deeply the plesiosaur's silhouette has embedded itself in our collective imagination. Some paleontologists have also toyed with the idea that the neck could have aided in hydrodynamic camouflage. By keeping their main bodies far away from a prey target and only advancing the small head, plesiosaurs could reduce the disturbance in the water that would normally alert prey to a predator's approach. This low-profile hunting tactic has analogies in modern-day aquatic predators, though no direct evidence links it conclusively to plesiosaurs. Plesiosaurs. Fossil distribution adds another layer to the puzzle. The presence of long-necked plesiosaur remains across a wide range of ancient environments, from deep marine deposits to coastal shallows, suggests they were adaptable. Yet this adaptability deepens the mystery. If their necks were so specialized for one type of hunting, how did they thrive in such different habitats? Could the neck have had multiple uses, shifting in function depending on the environment? The unanswered questions multiply when we consider the sheer energy demands of such anatomy. Maintaining and controlling a long neck would require strong musculature and an efficient circulatory system. Did plesiosaurs evolve specialized adaptations to pump blood to the brain over such distances, perhaps similar to but distinct from the mechanisms in modern giraffes? Without soft tissue evidence, these physiological mysteries remain locked away in deep time. In museum halls today, their skeletons stretch out beneath carefully arranged lighting, necks arching as though frozen mid-hunt. The bones tell us they were real, but they do not tell us precisely how they lived. Artists and scientists alike attempt to breathe life into the dry fossils, but each depiction, whether a swift predator darting through schools of fish, a stealthy ambusher drifting in the shadows, or a slow-moving grazer of jellyfish and soft-bodied prey, is built on fragments of evidence and informed speculation. The Jurassic seas have long since vanished, replaced by mountains, deserts, and plains. Yet somewhere in those vanished waters, plesiosaurs moved with a grace that belies our uncertainty about them. Their long necks remain both a signature of their form and a cipher of their purpose, an anatomical feature so distinctive, yet so poorly understood, that it stands as an emblem of the limits of our knowledge. Perhaps the truth is still hidden in some unexcavated deposit, waiting in the stone. A complete skeleton preserved in perfect articulation, maybe even with traces of skin or muscle impressions that could show us exactly how the neck was used. Until that moment comes, we are left with questions that ripple like the surface of an ancient sea. Was the plesiosaur's long neck a weapon, a lure, a signal, or something we have not yet imagined? The answer, like the creature itself, drifts somewhere between the known and the unknown. In the rolling hills of Liaoning Province, China, where mist clings to the ridges and farmers still turn over the soil with hand tools, the earth holds a fragile record of life from over 150 million years ago. Here, fine-grained lake sediments have preserved fossils with such delicate precision that even the faint outline of ancient feathers remains etched in stone. These impressions, ghostly halos around the bones of small dinosaurs, are some of the earliest direct evidence that feathers did not begin with birds as we know them, but in creatures far older, from deep within the Jurassic. At first glance, these early feathers are not the sleek aerodynamic structures we associate with modern flight. Many were little more than filaments, simple hair-like strands sprouting from the skin. Others formed soft, downy coverings or primitive plumes. Fossils of dinosaurs, such as Anchiornis, Epidexipteryx, and even certain species of Juravenator, suggest that feathers may have originated for reasons entirely unrelated to flight. But why, then, would evolution invest in something so complex for creatures that, in many cases, never left the ground? Mainstream hypotheses point toward insulation as the most likely starting point. In a Jurassic world where climates varied dramatically between regions, a feathered coat could have helped small-bodied dinosaurs retain heat, especially in cooler environments or during seasonal drops in temperature. Feathers, even in their simplest form, would have offered a thermal advantage over bare skin or scales. This theory gained strength from the discovery of feather-like structures in both small predators and early herbivores, hinting that the adaptation was widespread and possibly ancient in origin. Another well-supported explanation is display. Even primitive feathers could have been brightly colored, patterned, or elongated to catch the eye of a mate or warn off a rival. Modern birds use feathers in elaborate courtship rituals, and paleontologists suspect that the roots of such behaviors may stretch back to the Jurassic. A flash of color or a distinctive silhouette could have communicated strength, health, or readiness to breed, messages as vital in prehistoric ecosystems as they are today. There is also the possibility of camouflage. Feathers can break up an animal's outline, blending it into dappled light or dense vegetation. In an age of towering predators and stealthy hunters, concealment would have been a valuable tool for both predator and prey. In this view, the evolution of feathers could have been driven not by the pursuit of speed in the air, but by the constant battle to remain unseen. Yet even as these explanations fit comfortably within evolutionary theory, the fossil record introduces complications. The discovery of filamentous coverings in species only distantly related to birds suggests that feather-like structures may have evolved earlier than previously thought, perhaps even before the split between the major dinosaur groups. Some paleontologists have gone so far as to suggest that the common ancestor of all dinosaurs, and possibly other archosaurs, may have had some form of primitive feathering. If true, this would mean that feathers are not a specialized innovation of a single lineage, but a deep-rooted trait that spread and diversified over tens of millions of years. More speculative theories tread into less certain territory. Some researchers have proposed that early feathers might have served sensory functions, detecting subtle changes in air currents or touch, much like whiskers in mammals. Others have entertained the possibility that they aided in moisture shedding, or even in thermoregulating eggs during brooding, uses that would have given an advantage long before flight entered the picture. Fringe interpretations push the timeline and purpose of feathers even further. A few have speculated about environmental triggers, perhaps elevated atmospheric oxygen levels or changes in ultraviolet radiation influencing the development of lightweight, fibrous integuments. There are even untested ideas that early feathers could have had a role in filtering dust or pollen in densely vegetated Jurassic landscapes, functioning as a kind of biological shield for the face and respiratory system. While such notions remain outside the mainstream, they remind us how little we truly know about the lives of these creatures. The evidence is not limited to China. Fossil finds in Germany, Mongolia, and even fragmentary remains from regions such as the deserts of Palestine suggest that feathered or feather-like dinosaurs had a far wider geographic range than once believed. These scattered clues raise the possibility that early feathers evolved under a variety of environmental pressures, adapting to local conditions in ways we may never fully reconstruct. But with every new specimen comes a paradox. The more examples we find, the more varied and complex the picture becomes. Some species display a mix of scales and feathers. Others carry elaborate tail plumes with no clear aerodynamic purpose, and still others bear evidence of pigments that suggest intricate coloration patterns. Each fossil adds detail, but also multiplies the questions. Were these early feathers an experiment of evolution, refined over time toward flight, or were they a stable adaptation, serving a different purpose entirely, with flight emerging much later as an unintended benefit? Walking among the fossil beds where these creatures once lived, it is easy to imagine them in life, darting between ferns, their bodies cloaked in soft, insulating filaments, strutting across open ground with tails fanned in brilliant color, or crouching low in the undergrowth, their feathered forms blending into the shifting light. The feathers we see in stone are only impressions, but they hint at a world of texture and color that time has almost completely erased. The earliest feathers challenge us to think of dinosaurs not as static, lumbering reptiles, but as dynamic, warm-blooded animals locked in a constant struggle for survival. Yet they also confront us with a mystery. At what point did these filaments cross the threshold from simple insulation or display to the intricate, interlocking structures capable of lifting a body into the air? And did that transformation happen once in a single lineage, or many times in parallel, shaped by the same evolutionary pressures across different branches of the dinosaur family tree? For now, the answer lies somewhere in the silence between the layers of stone. Each new discovery brings us closer, but also reminds us of the vast gulf of time and information that separates us from the Jurassic world. Perhaps the next breakthrough will come from a fossil so perfectly preserved that it captures not just the shape, but the color and microscopic structure of these ancient feathers, revealing, at last, the moment when they first began their long journey toward flight. Until then, the origins of feathers remain a story half told, a puzzle with pieces still buried in the earth waiting to be found. Beneath the windswept cliffs of the Junggar Basin in northwestern China, layers of ancient sediment lie stacked like the pages of a history book no human was meant to read. Here, in exposures that date to the late Jurassic, fossil hunters have uncovered the remains of creatures whose presence seems almost too sudden, too advanced for their time. Theropod dinosaurs whose anatomy suggests a leap in evolution rather than a gradual climb. Their appearance in the fossil record, abrupt and without a clear sequence of transitional forms, has stirred both fascination and debate within paleontology. These theropods were not the hulking, primitive predators of earlier epochs. They bore features that seem to foreshadow the sleek efficiency of later Cretaceous hunters. Slender, hollow bones hint at agility. Specialized joints suggest a capacity for rapid, precise movement. And in some cases, delicate impressions of proto-feathers point toward a link with avian lineages still tens of millions of years away. Their skulls, with forward-facing eyes and finely serrated teeth, tell of predators capable of both speed and precision. A combination that appears strikingly modern for creatures rooted in the Jurassic world. From a mainstream perspective, the sudden emergence of such forms is not entirely unexpected. The fossil record, after all, is incomplete. Gaps can create the illusion of abrupt transitions where none truly existed. In this view, advanced theropods did not appear overnight, but evolved through incremental changes over millions of years. Their earlier stages simply hidden by the accidents of preservation. Rock layers that might contain those transitional fossils may lie deep beneath unexcavated ground, or may have eroded away entirely. Yet even within this cautious explanation, questions linger. Why do these advanced theropods seem to cluster in certain regions, China, Argentina, and parts of North America, while leaving so little trace elsewhere? Were they genuinely absent from other parts of the world, or have we simply failed to find them? And if they were localized, what environmental or ecological forces drove such concentrated evolutionary leaps? Some researchers have explored the possibility of environmental catalysts. The late Jurassic was a time of shifting continents, fluctuating climates, and rapidly evolving ecosystems. In certain areas, these pressures could have intensified competition, driving predatory lineages to adapt more quickly. Isolated land masses, seasonal prey migrations, or the rise of new herbivorous species may have created the perfect storm for rapid innovation. In this scenario, advanced theropods are not anomalies. They are products of ecological hotspots where evolution ran ahead of the global pace. Still, other theories edge toward the speculative. Could we be seeing the results of convergent evolution? Different theropod lineages separated by geography, arriving independently at similar advanced designs? Or are these similarities an illusion caused by interpreting fragmentary fossils through the lens of later, better-known species? Such questions are not easily answered, as each new discovery both clarifies and complicates the picture. More fringe ideas venture further. A few have wondered whether sudden bursts of evolutionary change might be triggered by genetic mechanisms we do not yet fully understand. Mutations, developmental shifts, or even horizontal gene transfer events in deep time. These suggestions remain controversial, but they reflect a growing awareness that evolution's tempo is not always steady. In rare cases, it may accelerate dramatically, producing forms that seem to leap ahead of their era. And then there are the interpretations that stray into the realm of the unconventional. Some suggest that the fossil record might be misleading not just because of missing layers, but because of misplaced ones, geological upheavals or dating errors that could make advanced forms seem older than they are. Others, largely outside the academic mainstream, have speculated about factors ranging from meteor impacts, altering evolutionary pathways, to ancient ecosystems being periodically reset by environmental catastrophes, allowing new forms to dominate with surprising speed. The global spread of these finds deepens the mystery. In addition to the Chinese specimens, theropods with unexpectedly advanced traits have been reported from Patagonia, the Morrison Formation in North America, and even from more fragmentary remains found in the Middle East, near the deserts of Palestine. These scattered traces suggest that the evolutionary changes leading to these creatures were not entirely isolated events, but perhaps part of a larger, interconnected pattern. Yet, the scarcity of intermediate fossils persists. Each new discovery seems to stand alone, with few clear relatives linking it smoothly to earlier, more primitive theropods. Are we simply seeing the survivors? The successful designs that outcompeted and replaced the transitional forms before they could leave a lasting fossil trail? Or does their sudden appearance reflect a more complex, less linear evolutionary story than we have assumed? In museums, their reconstructed skeletons stand poised as if ready to move, their forms echoing both their ancient past and their distant future in the lineage of birds. Visitors gaze at them with the same mix of awe and curiosity that paleontologists feel in the field, a recognition that these animals occupy a strange position in time. They are unmistakably Jurassic, yet their anatomy seems to look ahead, bridging a gap that the rocks have yet to fill. The sun sets over the fossil beds of the Junger Basin, turning the sandstone ridges a deep, blood-red hue. The wind whispers across the empty plain, and the ground beneath holds its silence. Somewhere within these layers, or perhaps far beyond them, the answers to this mystery may lie waiting. Were these advanced theropods the product of a slow, hidden progression, or the result of rapid, transformative bursts in evolution? Until the Earth yields more of its record, we are left to wonder how, In the vast theater of the Jurassic, certain predators seem to arrive not just ready to survive, but already perfected for the hunt. In the vast, sun-baked expanses of Patagonia, colossal bones lie half-buried in the ochre dust. Vertebrae the size of bathtubs, femurs taller than a grown man, remnants of creatures so immense that their very existence seems to stretch the limits of biology. These were the sauropods, the long-necked giants of the Jurassic world, some reaching over 30 meters in length and weighing more than 70 tons. They were the largest land animals to ever walk the earth, and yet their size remains one of paleontology's most enduring puzzles. Fossils from Argentina, Tanzania, the American West, and even fragments from the deserts of Palestine all tell the same story. Sauropods did not just get big, they redefined what big meant for terrestrial life. Their proportions dwarf those of any living animal, and they sustained this gigantism for tens of millions of years. But why? What drove evolution to produce such extremes, and how did these animals manage to survive at sizes that seem almost impossible? Mainstream explanations begin with diet. Sauropods were herbivores in a world of abundant plant life. The Jurassic was a greenhouse planet, lush with ferns, cycads, and conifers. A massive body could house an enormous digestive system, allowing them to process vast quantities of low-nutrient vegetation efficiently. Their long necks, reaching high into the canopy or sweeping low across the ground, gave them access to food sources untouched by other herbivores. In this view, size was not just an advantage, it was the ultimate feeding strategy. Another key factor may have been defense. A full-grown sauropod was virtually immune to predation. Even the largest theropods would have thought twice before challenging an adult, whose sheer bulk and powerful tail could crush a predator with a single blow. If juveniles could survive the vulnerable early years, size became its own shield. Over evolutionary time, natural selection may have consistently favored larger individuals, driving the trend toward gigantism. There are also physiological considerations. Sauropods had unique adaptations that made their immense size possible. Lightweight, hollow bones to reduce weight, a bird-like respiratory system with air sacs to increase oxygen efficiency, and possibly a metabolism finely tuned to balance energy needs with environmental conditions. Combined, these traits allowed them to grow quickly and maintain massive bodies without overheating or collapsing under their own weight. Yet even these explanations do not fully resolve the mystery. If abundant food and predator deterrence were the main drivers, why did other herbivores of the same era, such as stegosaurs and ornithopods, remain comparatively small? Were sauropods exploiting a niche so specialized that no other group could follow? And why, after thriving for so long, did no terrestrial animals of similar scale ever reappear after their extinction? Some researchers look to environmental conditions unique to the Jurassic. Higher atmospheric oxygen and carbon dioxide levels may have fueled faster plant growth and possibly supported the high metabolic demands of giant animals. The warm, stable climates of the period may have reduced the need for seasonal migration, allowing sauropods to feed and grow year-round. If these conditions were indeed critical, the end of the Jurassic may have marked not just the loss of species, but the loss of an entire ecological framework capable of sustaining such giants. From here, the theories branch into more speculative territory. A few paleontologists have proposed that gigantism may have been driven in part by reproductive strategies. Larger females could produce more eggs or invest more energy into each offspring, increasing survival rates. Others wonder if social behavior played a role, whether large size was advantageous in herding dynamics, migration, or even in long-distance communication, perhaps through deep, resonating calls that could carry across open plains. Fringe interpretations stray further still. Some have speculated about fluctuations in Earth's gravity or other planetary conditions over geological time, though no robust evidence supports such claims. Others point to potential evolutionary runaway effects, where once a lineage began trending toward larger size, sexual selection and survival pressures amplified the process to extremes. In this view, sauropods may have been caught in a feedback loop, each generation producing individuals just slightly larger than the last. The fossil record offers tantalizing hints but few definitive answers. Trackways reveal herds moving across floodplains, necks sweeping in unison as they grazed. Bone histology shows rapid growth rates, suggesting that sauropods reached maturity in just a few decades, remarkably fast for animals of their size. Yet the same evidence raises further questions. How much food did such rapid growth require? And how did they find enough of it in landscapes shared with countless other herbivores? In modern ecosystems, size comes with trade-offs. Higher energy demands, slower reproduction, greater vulnerability to environmental change. For sauropods, these risks seem to have been outweighed by the benefits, but only in the specific context of the Jurassic. When climates shifted, ecosystems transformed, and new predators emerged, the balance may have tipped, leaving no room for creatures of their magnitude. Today, their towering skeletons fill the largest halls of natural history museums, their necks arching toward the rafters. Visitors stand beneath them in awe, dwarfed by a scale that feels almost alien. It is easy to see them as invincible titans, yet their size was both their greatest strength and, perhaps, in the end, their greatest vulnerability. The question lingers like the shadow of a giant across the ancient plains. Were sauropods simply the inevitable outcome of evolutionary pressures in a uniquely favorable world? Or do they represent a fleeting, unrepeatable experiment in life's capacity to push physical boundaries? Until the Earth yields more of its secrets, the true reason for their unprecedented size remains hidden, an unanswered chapter in the story of the Jurassic. On the floodplains of the late Jurassic, the air is thick with heat and the distant rumble of thunder. Herds of Diplodocus and Apatosaurus move slowly across the open ground, their massive silhouettes casting long shadows in the golden light. But in the dappled cover near a stand of conifers, another shape waits, sleeker, leaner, and built for the kill. This is Allosaurus, the dominant predator of its time, its gaze fixed on the shifting mass of herbivores in the distance. Fossils tell us it was one of the most successful hunters of the Jurassic, yet exactly how it brought down prey many times its own size remains one of paleontology's most enduring mysteries. The bones of Allosaurus speak of power and precision. At up to 9 meters long, it was not the largest predator of its era, but it was agile and well-armed. Its skull was light yet strong, studded with serrated teeth like rows of razor blades. Its forelimbs, short compared to its hind legs, ended in 3-fingered hands tipped with long, curved claws. Beneath the skin, a sophisticated balance of muscles and ligaments allowed for quick bursts of speed and sudden, controlled strikes. But fossils alone cannot fully reveal how these adaptations were used in the hunt. One of the most debated ideas is the so-called hatchet attack hypothesis. Some paleontologists believe that Allosaurus may have swung its head downward and forward in repeated chopping motions, using its upper jaw like a bladed weapon to open deep wounds. This is supported by studies of its neck vertebrae, which show a degree of flexibility and muscle attachment sites consistent with powerful vertical strikes. If true, this technique would have allowed Allosaurus to inflict massive blood loss on large prey, wearing them down without engaging in prolonged struggles. Others suggest a different approach, that Allosaurus was a grapple-and-bite predator, using its claws to latch onto prey while delivering repeated bites to vulnerable areas. This method is reminiscent of big cats today, though the biomechanics would have been unique to a bipedal hunter of such size. Tooth marks on fossilized sauropod bones lend some support to the idea, showing patterns consistent with multiple, shallow bites rather than a single, bone-crushing chomp. Still, questions remain. Allosaurus's bite force, while formidable, was not as crushing as that of later predators like Tyrannosaurus rex. This has led some to wonder whether it relied less on brute strength and more on precision and strategy. Could it have targeted soft tissues, the neck, underbelly, or limbs, avoiding the heavily muscled flanks of giant herbivores? And if so, did this require coordinated attacks, perhaps involving multiple individuals working together? The possibility of cooperative hunting is one of the most tantalizing and controversial aspects of the Allosaurus mystery. Fossil beds, such as the Cleveland Lloyd Quarry in Utah, contain the remains of dozens of Allosaurus individuals alongside herbivores, leading some researchers to speculate that they hunted in groups, much like wolves. Yet this interpretation is debated. The mass assemblage could instead represent a predator trap, animals drawn to an easy meal, only to become stuck themselves. Without direct evidence of social structure, the idea of coordinated packs remains unproven. More speculative theories explore the idea that Allosaurus may have been an opportunistic predator, switching between active hunting and scavenging depending on the circumstances. Its relatively long legs could have allowed it to travel over large areas in search of carcasses, while its speed and agility made it a capable ambush hunter when opportunities arose. This flexibility may have been the key to its long-term success in diverse Jurassic ecosystems. Fringe interpretations push the conversation into less conventional territory. Some have proposed that Allosaurus may have relied heavily on sensory abilities, keen eyesight or an acute sense of smell, to track prey over long distances. Others suggest it could have used the element of intimidation, approaching slowly and deliberately to trigger panic in herds, then isolating weaker individuals in the ensuing chaos. While speculative, such ideas remind us that the mind of a predator can be as important as its weapons. The fossil record offers a few haunting glimpses into predator-prey encounters. Pathological bones of sauropods show healed bite marks, suggesting that Allosaurus attacks were sometimes survived, evidence of either failed hunts or deliberate wounding followed by later pursuit. Conversely, injuries on Allosaurus skeletons, broken ribs, tooth-scarred jaws, hint at the dangers of taking on prey many times their size. Hunting in the Jurassic was never without risk. From the Morrison Formation in North America to the fossil-rich beds of Portugal and even fragmentary remains in the Middle East near the deserts of Palestine, Allosaurus' range was vast. Its adaptability to different environments suggests a predator capable of adjusting its tactics to match the prey and terrain, a hallmark of an apex hunter. But whether it relied on brute force, precision strikes, coordinated hunts, or a combination of all three is a question the rocks have yet to answer. In museum halls, the mounted skeleton of Allosaurus stands mid-stride, its jaws open as if frozen in the act of pursuit. To the casual observer, it looks every bit the perfect predator. Yet the truth of how it hunted remains just out of reach, a puzzle of bone, muscle, and behavior lost to time. Perhaps the answer lies buried in an as-yet undiscovered fossil bed, one that preserves predator and prey in the midst of an interaction, captured in stone like a prehistoric photograph. Until then, we are left with possibilities, each one painting a slightly different picture of the Jurassic's top predator. Was Allosaurus a solitary ambusher, a cooperative tactician, or something entirely unlike the hunters we know today? The answer drifts somewhere between evidence and imagination, waiting in the shadows of a world long gone. In the dim light of a museum archive, a slab of stone lies under careful guard. On its surface, the delicate outline of a prehistoric creature is etched in fine detail: bones, feathers, and, faintly, the ghostly imprint of patterns once alive with color. It is a rare glimpse into a world we have long imagined but seldom seen. For all the power and presence dinosaurs command in our collective memory, One question continues to elude us. What colors truly painted the bodies of these ancient animals? The fossil record has, for most of history, been silent on the matter. Bones preserve shape and size, but the pigments that once gave skin and feathers their hues are fragile, vanishing under millions of years of burial. For decades, reconstructions were guided more by artistic choice than by scientific certainty. Dinosaurs were depicted in muted earth tones to match the camouflage of modern reptiles, or in striking patterns inspired by birds, reptiles, and mammals alive today. These images shaped how generations imagined the Jurassic world, but were they anywhere close to the truth? In the last 2 decades, scientific advances have begun to change the conversation. Under powerful microscopes, researchers have identified fossilized melanosomes, tiny, pigment-containing structures, preserved in the feathers and skin impressions of some species. The shape and arrangement of these melanosomes can, in some cases, hint at original colors. In early feathered dinosaurs from China's Liaoning province, scientists have detected patterns suggesting black and white striping, rusty reds, and even iridescent sheens. For the first time, the colors of certain dinosaurs have moved from speculation into evidence-based reconstruction. And yet, the picture is far from complete. Melanosomes reveal only part of the palette, mainly blacks, browns, reds, and some structural colors like iridescence. Yellows, greens, and blues often come from pigments or structural arrangements far less likely to survive fossilization. Even when we can estimate color, we cannot always place it accurately across the body. Was that rust red confined to the head? Did the stripes run along the flanks or the tail? Without full preservation, the patterns remain a matter of interpretation. Mainstream theories about dinosaur coloration often align with the roles color plays in modern ecosystems. Camouflage may have been vital for both predators and prey, with mottled or banded patterns breaking up outlines in forest shadows or open plains. Some species may have used bright colors for display, courtship rituals, dominance displays, or species recognition, just as birds and lizards do today. In this view, the Jurassic landscape was far from drab. It may have been alive with vibrant hues, from the subtle shimmer of scaled hides to the bold flare of feathered crests. But these functional explanations only scratch the surface. Coloration also intersects with behavior and environment in complex ways. Could some species have shifted colors seasonally, as Arctic animals do today? Might juveniles have worn different patterns than adults, aiding survival during their most vulnerable years? And what of species that roamed across varied habitats? Did their coloration change with their range? These questions push the limits of what the fossil record can presently answer. Speculative ideas reach further. Some have proposed that certain dinosaurs may have exhibited ultraviolet patterns invisible to the human eye, as many birds and reptiles do today. Such markings could have been crucial in communication or mate selection, but would leave no trace in fossil form. Others wonder whether bioluminescence, a rarity among land animals today, might have existed in some form, particularly among species living near coastal or swampy environments where such traits evolve more readily in modern ecosystems. While evidence for this is absent, the mere possibility highlights how much of dinosaur appearance remains beyond our perception. Fringe theories, though largely unsupported by direct evidence, illustrate the enduring allure of the unknown. Some artists and writers imagine dinosaurs in colors far outside natural expectations. Iridescent blues shimmering like tropical beetles, or skin patterns that shifted with mood or temperature. While such visions belong more to creative speculation than to science, they reflect an important truth. The Jurassic world was almost certainly stranger and more diverse in appearance than the subdued tones of early reconstructions. Global fossil discoveries continue to broaden the scope of the mystery. Skin impressions from hadrosaurs in North America show scale patterns that could have supported complex markings. Fragmentary finds from Europe and the deserts of Palestine hint that even large-bodied, non-feathered dinosaurs might have sported intricate coloration for purposes we cannot yet define. These glimpses suggest that color was not limited to small bird-like species. It was a universal feature of dinosaur biology, shaped by countless evolutionary pressures. And yet our reconstructions remain bound by the fragments we have. For every specimen with preserved melanosomes, there are thousands with no direct color evidence. The temptation is to extrapolate from the few to the many, but doing so risks overlooking the full range of possibilities. It is a reminder that the Jurassic world, like the dinosaurs themselves, does not yield all its secrets easily. In exhibition halls, lifelike models stand beneath spotlights, their skins painted in hues chosen by expert artists drawing on the best available science. Some wear muted greens and browns, others flash with reds, blues, and golds. Visitors pause before them, perhaps unaware that each color choice is part science, part inference, and part imagination. Somewhere in the rock, perhaps deep beneath layers still untouched by excavation, there may be a specimen preserved in such detail that every shade, every pattern, is locked in place, a true record of what a dinosaur looked like in life. Until that day comes, the colors of the Jurassic remain a half-told story, visible only in traces and possibilities. Were these ancient giants draped in camouflage, adorned in ceremonial splendor, or painted in colors that defy our imagination? The answer for now lies hidden in stone, waiting to be seen again for the first time in over 150 million years. On a windswept cliff overlooking an ancient shoreline, the skeleton of a pterosaur lies entombed in rock, its delicate bones preserved with an almost impossible grace. The long, tapering wings stretch out like a memory of flight, and the slender skull hints at a life spent riding the air. But it is what lies hidden within the skull, long since turned to stone, that tells one of the most intriguing stories of the Jurassic skies: the adaptations of the pterosaur brain. Pterosaurs were the first vertebrates to achieve true powered flight, taking to the air over 70 million years before the earliest birds. Their fossil record is scattered across the globe, from the coastal cliffs of England to the deserts of Mongolia and the ancient sediments near the shores of what is now Palestine. Yet in all these places, the same question lingers. What allowed these reptiles to master the complex demands of flight long before any other vertebrate had done so? Computed tomography, CT scans of rare, well-preserved skulls have given us glimpses into the answer. These scans reveal an endocast, an internal mold of the brain cavity, that shows the relative size and shape of different regions of the brain. Compared to most reptiles, pterosaurs had remarkably enlarged optic lobes, suggesting acute vision, perhaps fine-tuned for spotting prey over vast distances or navigating complex aerial environments. Their cerebellum, responsible for balance and coordination, was also highly developed, hinting at the precise control required to maneuver wings stretching several meters across in shifting winds. Mainstream interpretations focus on the demands of flight itself. To survive in the air, a pterosaur would have needed rapid processing of visual information, instant adjustments to body position, and precise muscle coordination. Enlarged semicircular canals in the inner ear, responsible for detecting head movement, indicate an extraordinary sensitivity to changes in orientation. This would have allowed pterosaurs to react instantly to gusts of wind, shifts in prey movement, or the turbulence created by their own wing beats. Some researchers have also noted the unusually large floccular lobes within the cerebellum. In modern birds, these are associated with integrating visual and vestibular input, essentially merging sight and balance into a seamless sense of position in space. For pterosaurs, this may have been the neurological foundation for their ability to launch from the ground. soar for long distances, and land with precision on narrow perches or cliff faces. Yet beyond these core adaptations, the function of certain brain structures remains speculative. Were some areas dedicated to social communication, perhaps through visual signals or aerial displays? Could pterosaurs have had mental maps of vast coastal territories, enabling seasonal migrations? And how much of their intelligence was devoted to problem-solving versus instinctive, hardwired flight behaviors? More speculative ideas suggest that pterosaurs may have processed visual information in ways unfamiliar to us. Given their large optic lobes, could they have perceived ultraviolet light, as many modern birds do, seeing patterns invisible to mammals and perhaps even to other reptiles? This might have allowed them to detect subtle changes in vegetation, water surfaces, or the plumage of potential mates. Without direct evidence from pigments or eye structures, this remains unproven, but it is a possibility that deepens the mystery of their aerial mastery. Fringe theories push further still. Some have proposed that the complexity of their brain structure hints at behaviors beyond hunting and flying, perhaps tool use, cooperative fishing, or coordinated group movement. While there is no fossil evidence to confirm such behaviors, these ideas arise from the recognition that flight alone demands such advanced neural integration that additional capabilities are not impossible. The fossil record complicates the picture. Smaller species with wingspans of just a meter or two seem to have had brain proportions not unlike their larger relatives, suggesting that these adaptations were not simply a product of size. This uniformity raises questions about the evolutionary origins of the pterosaur brain. Did these neural traits evolve gradually alongside early flight, or did they emerge suddenly as a prerequisite for taking to the skies at all? In some exceptionally preserved fossils, faint traces of soft tissues have been detected, hinting at the structure of the meninges and vascular systems surrounding the brain. These details suggest a highly efficient system for oxygen and nutrient delivery, critical for sustaining the intense metabolic demands of flight. But just how far this efficiency went, and whether it supported bursts of high intelligence or purely reflexive skill, remains an open question. Modern analogies only go so far. Birds and bats both evolved powered flight, yet their neurological solutions are different from each other and from pterosaurs. This makes direct comparison difficult. The pterosaur brain seems to represent a third pathway, an independent evolutionary experiment in mastering the air. That independence raises the question, were there capabilities we cannot easily imagine, simply because no living animal possesses them today? As the Jurassic winds blow across fossil cliffs and ancient seabeds, the pterosaur's brain remains locked in stone, a silent record of a mind built for a vanished world. We can measure its shape, model its structures, and guess at its capabilities, but the lived experience of these creatures, the way they saw the sea glint in the sun, the way they felt the lift of a rising thermal, will always be beyond our reach. Perhaps one day, a perfectly preserved fossil will surface, its soft tissues intact enough to reveal new details of these ancient brains. Until then, we are left to wonder, were pterosaurs merely instinct-driven flyers, their brains tuned solely for survival in the skies, or were they capable of thoughts, perceptions, and strategies as alien to us as their world is distant in time? The answer, like the creatures themselves, soars somewhere between the known and the unknown. In the remote badlands of Patagonia, the wind moves like a whisper through jagged outcrops of sandstone and shale. The ground is littered with fragments of ancient bone and petrified wood, each one a clue to a vanished world. Here, paleontologists have uncovered some of the most spectacular dinosaur fossils ever found: colossal titanosaur skeletons, razor-toothed abelisaurs, and entire nesting grounds frozen in time. Yet for all its riches, South America hides a strange and troubling absence in its prehistoric record: a gap in the fossil timeline during the Jurassic period. This Jurassic gap is one of the continent's great paleontological mysteries. Across much of the world, in North America, Europe, Asia, and even parts of Africa, Jurassic rock layers are rich with dinosaur remains. The Morrison Formation in the United States yields towering Brachiosaurus and predatory Allosaurus. The Tendaguru beds in Tanzania hold an abundance of sauropods and stegosaurs. China's deposits preserve everything from feathered theropods to early mammals. But in South America, the same period, spanning roughly 201 to 145 million years ago, is strangely underrepresented. It is not that Jurassic rocks are entirely missing from the continent. Geologists have identified formations from the right age in Argentina, Brazil, and Chile. Yet these layers often contain only sparse and fragmentary fossils, with few complete skeletons and limited diversity. Why, in a land that would later become one of the most dinosaur-rich regions on Earth, does the Jurassic record seem so thin? Mainstream explanations point first to geology. Many Jurassic sediments in South America have been deeply buried by later deposits or eroded away by millions of years of wind and water. Volcanic activity during the breakup of the supercontinent Gondwana may have destroyed or obscured fossil-bearing strata. In other cases, Jurassic rocks may exist but remain inaccessible, hidden beneath thick forests, remote mountain ranges, or modern cities. Simply put, the fossils might be there, but we have not yet reached them. Another possibility is that ancient environments in parts of South America during the Jurassic were less favorable for fossil preservation. Swamps, lakes, and river deltas often produce rich fossil beds, while arid uplands or rapidly changing coastlines can leave behind far fewer remains. If much of the continent was dominated by conditions that discouraged burial and preservation, the scarcity of fossils would be a natural result. Yet these practical explanations leave room for deeper questions. Did South America's dinosaur communities during the Jurassic differ dramatically from those of other continents? Could there have been unique lineages, species found nowhere else, that flourished and vanished without leaving a trace in the rocks we have studied so far? Some researchers speculate that the Jurassic gap may mask a crucial chapter in evolutionary history. The continent's later dinosaur fauna of the Cretaceous includes groups with ancient origins, suggesting their ancestors must have been present in the Jurassic. Without fossils from this period, we cannot see how these lineages adapted, competed, and evolved during the age when other parts of the world were teeming with diverse species. Speculative ideas stretch further. A few have suggested that certain regions of Gondwana, including parts of South America, may have acted as refugees during climatic or environmental shifts, places where species survived in isolation. If true, this could mean that the continent's Jurassic dinosaurs followed evolutionary paths distinct from their relatives elsewhere. The absence of fossils would then represent not just a gap in data, but the silence of a world apart. Fringe theories take the idea in different directions. Some point to the possibility of dramatic environmental upheavals, massive volcanic events, asteroid impacts, or sea level changes that selectively affected South America during the Jurassic, reducing populations or shifting ecosystems in ways that left fewer opportunities for fossilization. While these events would not necessarily erase all evidence, they could explain why the surviving record is so limited. There is also the human factor. The history of paleontology in South America is younger, and in some areas less intensively pursued than in North America or Europe. Political and economic challenges, combined with the sheer scale and inaccessibility of fossil-rich regions, have slowed exploration. This means that what appears to be a genuine gap in the fossil record might, in part, be an artifact of where and how we have looked. Still, the enigma persists. Fieldwork in recent decades has begun to yield tantalizing clues. A partial skeleton here, a handful of teeth there, suggesting that the Jurassic in South America was not empty, only hidden. Some of these finds hint at animals both familiar and strange, from early relatives of giant sauropods to small, fleet-footed predators. But without more complete specimens, these glimpses remain shadows, offering only the faintest outline of the living world they came from. Standing in the heart of Patagonia, it is easy to imagine what might still lie buried beneath the gravel and dust. The skeleton of an unknown giant, a nest of eggs from a species lost to time, or a fossil bed that could rewrite our understanding of dinosaur evolution on the continent. Each expedition into these remote landscapes carries the hope that the next layer of rock will close the gap or open it even wider. Until then, the Jurassic gap remains an unanswered question in the story of life on Earth. Was South America during this time a land of hidden abundance, its fossils waiting patiently for discovery? Or was it truly a quieter stage in the age of dinosaurs, a place where evolution took a different path, leaving only faint traces in the geological record? The rocks have yet to speak their full truth, and perhaps they never will. But the silence is as much a part of the mystery as the bones themselves, inviting us to keep searching for what the continent still holds in its depths. Beneath the towering shadows of Jurassic giants, in a world dominated by the thunder of sauropod herds and the stalking steps of apex predators, another story was unfolding, one far quieter, yet no less remarkable. In the leaf litter of primeval forests under the cover of night, small, fur-covered creatures scurried unseen. Their bones, so small they could fit in the palm of a hand, tell us they were among the earliest true mammals, living in an age where survival meant avoiding notice at all costs. The fossil remains of these early mammals, delicate jaws, tiny teeth, and rare impressions of fur, have been found in scattered deposits from China's Teotihuacan Formation to the ancient sediments of Portugal, and even in fragmentary form in regions of South America. They reveal a surprising truth. Mammals had already developed key traits we associate with their modern descendants, even while dinosaurs ruled the land. Specialized teeth for slicing insects and grinding seeds, keen senses of smell and hearing, and warm-blooded metabolisms allowed them to thrive in niches their reptilian contemporaries did not exploit. Mainstream explanations suggest their survival tactics centered on a nocturnal lifestyle. Living in the shadows of the day's dominant creatures, these mammals likely hunted at night, using acute hearing and sensitive whiskers to detect prey in darkness. Their small size meant they needed less food, and their ability to generate their own body heat allowed them to be active when the chill of night slowed reptiles into torpor. In this way, they carved out a world parallel to the dinosaurs, a hidden realm that only came alive after sunset. Fossilized inner ear bones offer further evidence of their adaptations. Compared to their reptilian ancestors, these mammals had complex cochleae, allowing them to detect a wider range of sound frequencies. This would have made them adept at hearing the soft rustle of insect wings, the skitter of small lizards, or the approach of predators. Their brains, too, show early signs of enlargement in areas associated with sensory processing, hinting at a heightened awareness of their surroundings. Yet, their survival was not solely a matter of hiding. Some species show evidence of arboreal adaptations, elongated fingers and flexible joints suited for climbing trees. In the canopy, they could escape ground-based predators and exploit food sources unavailable to most reptiles. Others appear to have been burrowers, retreating into underground tunnels where temperature and humidity remained stable, and where they could raise young in safety. Speculation arises when we consider their social behavior. Did these early mammals live solitary lives, slipping silently through the undergrowth, or did they form small groups for mutual protection? While direct fossil evidence is rare, the survival advantages of cooperation, sharing alarm calls, defending nests, are seen in many small mammals today and could have deep evolutionary roots. More speculative still is the question of how these creatures interacted with the changing environments of the Jurassic. Climate fluctuations, shifting vegetation, and the rise of flowering plant precursors may have offered new opportunities for food and shelter. Were these mammals simply opportunists, taking advantage of whatever the moment offered? Or were they more adaptable than we assume, capable of altering their habits in response to subtle environmental changes? Fringe theories sometimes go further, proposing that early mammals may have influenced their surroundings in ways we rarely associate with such small creatures. Could they have played a role in controlling insect populations, shaping the ecological balance of their habitats? Might they even have competed in quiet ways with smaller dinosaur species for food and shelter? While difficult to prove, these ideas remind us that even in an age dominated by reptiles, mammals were active participants in the evolutionary drama, not mere bystanders. The rarity of their fossils adds to the mystery. Their fragile bones were less likely to survive the fossilization process, meaning that much of their history remains invisible to us. Each new discovery, a tooth, a jaw, a partial skeleton, offers only a fragment of a much larger picture. This scarcity leaves enormous gaps in our understanding, forcing scientists to piece together their lives from scattered clues and modern analogies. Occasionally, a find emerges that challenges our assumptions. The discovery of Volaticotherium, a Jurassic mammal with gliding membranes, revealed that some species were already experimenting with aerial locomotion millions of years before bats appeared. Others, like Castorocauda, showed semi-aquatic adaptations, hinting at an even broader ecological range than previously imagined. These outliers suggest that early mammals were not just survivors. They were innovators, testing evolutionary possibilities in the margins of the dinosaur world. Standing in the quiet halls of a museum, looking at the tiny jawbones under glass, it is hard to reconcile their size with their significance. These were the ancestors of every mammal alive today, from mice to humans. Their strategies for survival, stealth, adaptability, and perhaps even ingenuity allowed them to endure for millions of years in the shadows of giants. But many questions remain. Were their lives as uniform as the small size of their fossils suggests, or was there a rich tapestry of behaviors and adaptations now lost to time? How much of their story lies buried, not just in rock, but in the genetic legacy they passed down? And what other forms might they have taken in environments we have yet to uncover? Somewhere, in the still hidden layers of Jurassic Earth, the answers may be waiting. Until they are found, the earliest true mammals remain an enigma. Small in stature, yet carrying the weight of a future they could never have imagined. Their survival was no accident, but the result of strategies so finely tuned that, against all odds, they outlasted the giants around them. The question is not only how they lived, but what more they might have been, in a world that has left us only whispers of their existence. Beneath the blue expanse of the Jurassic seas, sunlight fades into shifting shadows, and vast shapes glide through the water. Ichthyosaurs, with bodies built for speed, cut through the currents like living torpedoes. Plesiosaurs patrol the depths with powerful flippers, their massive jaws ready to strike. Plesiosaurs, long-necked and graceful, move with a rhythm both deliberate and unhurried. They dominated the oceans for millions of years, but scattered fossils found far from their presumed ranges raise a compelling question. How did these marine reptiles migrate across such vast and often perilous oceans? The puzzle emerges from the distribution of their remains. Fossils of closely related species appear in regions now separated by thousands of kilometers: South America and Europe, Australia and Antarctica, the deserts of North Africa, and the ancient seabeds near the coasts of what is now Palestine. During the Jurassic, These areas were divided by stretches of open ocean, some hundreds or even thousands of kilometers wide. The implication is clear. These creatures undertook journeys of staggering scale, crossing entire marine basins to colonize new territories. But how? Mainstream explanations focus first on the geography of the time. The continents were not yet arranged as they are today. Gondwana and Laurasia were still in the process of breaking apart, and shallow epicontinental seas covered much of the land. These inland waterways could have acted as stepping stones, providing relatively sheltered routes for long-distance travel. Seasonal shifts in water temperature and food availability might have encouraged migrations along these routes, much like modern whales follow plankton blooms and fish migrations. Paleontologists also consider physiology. Many marine reptiles were warm-blooded, or at least capable of maintaining elevated body temperatures, allowing them to travel through cooler waters that might have deterred other reptiles. Their strong hydrodynamic bodies could sustain long-distance swimming, and some may have been able to store enough energy reserves to endure long stretches without feeding, an essential trait for crossing nutrient-poor open seas. Yet the fossil record complicates these straightforward models. The same species or close relatives appear in places where no obvious shallow water corridors existed, even during the Jurassic's higher sea levels. Did they venture across the true open ocean, far from any coastal refuge? If so, how did they navigate? Speculation arises here. Some researchers suggest they may have followed ancient current systems, predictable flows of warm water that connected distant parts of the Jurassic world. These currents could have acted like invisible highways, guiding them from one feeding ground to the next. Others propose that marine reptiles might have used sensory cues, magnetic fields, the position of the sun, or even low-frequency sounds traveling through water, to orient themselves over vast distances. There is also the question of behavior. Were these migrations solitary endeavors, or did they occur in coordinated groups? Modern sea turtles, for example, return to the same nesting beaches generation after generation, navigating across entire oceans with uncanny precision. Could some Jurassic marine reptiles have been similarly faithful to breeding or feeding sites, traveling thousands of kilometers to reach them? More speculative still is the possibility that some species may have been semi-anadromous, spending most of their lives in the open ocean, but returning to shallow coastal waters, lagoons, or even river mouths to give birth. Fossil evidence of pregnant ichthyosaurs in sheltered environments lends some support to this idea, though it remains unclear whether such migrations were seasonal, cyclical, or opportunistic. Fringe theories stretch the mystery further. A few have suggested that we underestimate the true range of Jurassic marine reptiles, imagining migrations where there may have been overlapping populations connected by intermittent dispersal. Others have speculated about the role of catastrophic events, storms, shifts in sea level, or sudden changes in climate, forcing large groups of marine reptiles into unfamiliar waters, where they then established new populations. The rarest and most intriguing finds come from unexpected places. Fossils of species typically associated with colder, high-latitude waters have been discovered in what were once tropical seas, and vice versa. These anomalies suggest either a broader tolerance for environmental variation than we assumed, or the existence of migratory patterns we have yet to decipher. From a geological perspective, the answer may lie in seafloor maps we cannot yet fully reconstruct. Ancient island chains, submerged plateaus, and shallow banks, now long gone, could have provided waypoints for navigation and rest. In this light, the open ocean of the Jurassic might not have been as empty or inhospitable as it seems to us today. And yet, the absence of direct evidence for these migrations leaves much to the imagination. We have no Jurassic equivalent of modern tracking devices, no preserved trail of movement across the sea floor. Instead, we piece together their journeys from the fragments they left behind, a jawbone eroded from a cliff in Patagonia, a vertebra weathering out of chalk in England, a flipper bone embedded in desert rock half a world away. Standing at the edge of a modern sea, it is tempting to picture them still out there. Vast forms gliding beneath the waves, following ancient paths laid down by currents and instinct. Were their migrations seasonal, precise and purposeful, or irregular, driven by opportunity and change? Did they travel in silence through the blue, guided by senses we can scarcely imagine? Or did the oceans of the Jurassic resound with their calls, carried for hundreds of kilometers through the water? Somewhere in the rock, perhaps in a deposit yet to be uncovered, may lie the key to understanding how they crossed those ancient oceans. Until then, the migration of Jurassic marine reptiles remains a story of motion without a map, a reminder that the world they knew was both connected and vast, and that their journeys may have been among the greatest ever undertaken in Earth's history. In the soft glow of a coastal sunset, the outline of a pterosaur would have been an unmistakable sight. Vast wings catching the dying light, a silhouette gliding effortlessly over the waves. For over 150 million years, these masters of the sky ruled the air, from delicate insect hunters no larger than a sparrow to giants like Quetzalcoatlus, with wingspans rivaling small aircraft. Yet by the end of the Cretaceous, they were gone. Birds, once a minor presence in the skies, would come to dominate. Why did pterosaurs vanish while their avian counterparts survived? The disappearance of pterosaurs is particularly striking when we consider their long evolutionary success. Emerging in the late Triassic, they had adapted to nearly every aerial niche: coastal fishers, inland hunters, scavengers, and even possible filter feeders. Their hollow bones and powerful flight muscles made them among the most efficient flyers the planet had ever seen. Fossil sites from Europe, South America, and the deserts of what is now Palestine preserve exquisite details of their anatomy, showing just how refined their adaptations were. But their absence in the modern world suggests that something, perhaps sudden, perhaps gradual, tipped the balance against them. Mainstream explanations often center on competition. By the late Cretaceous, birds were diversifying rapidly, filling ecological roles that may once have been held by smaller and mid-sized pterosaurs. Unlike pterosaurs, birds reproduced more quickly, laid smaller eggs that could be hidden from predators, and may have been more adaptable to changing conditions. As birds spread, they may have edged out smaller pterosaurs from certain habitats, forcing the surviving pterosaur lineages into ever more specialized roles. By the end, most were giants, impressive, but perhaps too specialized to weather sudden environmental upheaval. Another perspective focuses on reproduction. Pterosaurs laid soft-shelled eggs, likely buried in sand or soil, similar to some reptiles today. Such eggs may have been more vulnerable to environmental changes, predation, or moisture loss than the hard-shelled eggs of birds. In times of climate instability, this vulnerability could have sharply reduced their reproductive success. Then there is the cataclysmic end Cretaceous event itself, the asteroid impact that devastated global ecosystems. Both birds and pterosaurs would have suffered enormous losses, but some bird lineages appear to have survived, possibly because they could exploit food sources unavailable to pterosaurs in the aftermath. Small, ground-dwelling birds may have fed on seeds and insects in the post-impact world, while pterosaurs, many of which were large aerial predators or fishers, faced a catastrophic collapse in their food supply. Yet the picture is not entirely one of slow decline. Fossil evidence suggests that large pterosaurs remained widespread and successful until the very end. Some species show no signs of diminishing size or diversity, raising the possibility that their disappearance was not inevitable, but the result of a singular catastrophic event from which they simply could not recover. This leads some researchers to speculate about subtler vulnerabilities. Were pterosaurs less efficient at conserving energy during flight than birds, making survival in a food-scarce world harder? Did their slow reproductive rates mean they could not rebound quickly after population crashes? Or could their reliance on specific coastal or open country habitats have left them more exposed to environmental collapse than the more adaptable bird lineages? Beyond mainstream hypotheses, more speculative ideas have been proposed. Some suggest that long-term climate shifts in the late Cretaceous may have altered wind patterns or reduced the thermal currents pterosaurs used for soaring, making their flight less efficient. Others wonder if disease, spreading through increasingly connected ecosystems, could have played a role, weakening populations before the final extinction blow. Fringe theories reach further still, proposing that our picture of their decline might be distorted by the fossil record itself. Because large, late-surviving pterosaurs are more likely to be preserved than smaller species, it is possible that many smaller, bird-sized pterosaurs persisted longer than we think, perhaps even surviving briefly into the Paleogene before being outcompeted entirely. However, no confirmed fossils support this notion, and it remains a tantalizing but unproven idea. What is certain is that pterosaurs and birds once shared the skies, and for much of the Mesozoic, pterosaurs held the upper hand. The shift in aerial dominance may not have been the result of direct conflict, but of gradual ecological reshuffling. Birds expanding into niches as environmental pressures and random chance narrowed the range of pterosaur survival strategies. In the silence of their absence, we are left with only their fossils: long, hollow bones, intricate wing structures, and occasionally the faint imprint of skin membranes that once stretched between elongated fingers. These remnants speak of creatures perfectly adapted to their world, yet unable to carry those adaptations into the new one that emerged after the Cretaceous ended. Perhaps the key to their disappearance lies not in a single cause, but in a convergence of challenges: competition from birds, vulnerability in reproduction, habitat loss, and finally, the sudden and overwhelming shock of a world changed in an instant. Or perhaps there is a chapter missing from the fossil record, a clue still hidden in rock, waiting to reveal a different ending to their story. Until that chapter is found, the question remains: why did the skies of the modern world belong to birds, and not to the last of the pterosaurs? Somewhere between the known and the unknown, their fate still drifts like a shadow over the ancient seas, reminding us that even the masters of the air are never beyond the reach of time. In the arid, sun-bleached badlands of the Morrison Formation, a fossilized skull emerges from the rock. Its serrated teeth curve like blades. Its eye sockets seem to watch even from stone, but what captures the gaze is the strange, blade-like projection rising from the top of its snout. This is Ceratosaurus, a predator of the late Jurassic, and the horn on its nose remains one of its most intriguing and debated features. Unlike the massive frills of ceratopsians or the elaborate crests of some hadrosaurs, the horn of Ceratosaurus was small, more a sharp ridge than a weapon. Composed of bone, likely covered in a sheath of keratin in life, it was positioned above the nostrils, giving the animal a distinctive profile among its contemporaries. Found in fossils across North America, Portugal, and even in fragmentary remains from Africa, this feature was consistent enough to be a defining trait of the genus. Yet its exact function has eluded definitive explanation for over a century. Mainstream interpretations often begin with display. Many paleontologists believe the nose horn served a visual purpose, perhaps as a signal to other members of the species. It could have been brightly colored in life, standing out against the darker tones of the skin, used to attract mates or assert dominance. In this view, the horn was less a weapon and more a badge of identity, a way to communicate strength, maturity, or reproductive fitness. Others suggest the horn may have played a role in species recognition. In an ecosystem where multiple large theropods roamed, Allosaurus, Torvosaurus, and Ceratosaurus among them, such a feature could have helped individuals distinguish their own kind from potential rivals or threats. This would have been especially important in complex habitats, where dense vegetation and shifting light could obscure body shape. Some have considered the possibility of combat. Could Ceratosaurus have used its horn in head-to-head clashes, locking and pushing against rivals in contests over territory or mates? While the structure appears too small and narrow to serve as a true ramming weapon, it might have been reinforced enough to withstand occasional impacts. However, the lack of obvious wear patterns or damage in fossil specimens makes this hypothesis harder to confirm. A more functional explanation proposes that the horn could have aided in hunting. Positioned above the nostrils, it might have helped part vegetation as the predator moved through undergrowth or even broken the surface of the water when swimming, a behavior some paleontologists think Ceratosaurus engaged in, given its relatively flexible tail and elongated body. In this scenario, the horn might have served as a hydrodynamic or aerodynamic aid, though direct evidence is lacking. Speculative ideas venture further. Some researchers have floated the notion that the horn could have been a sensory structure, perhaps housing nerves or specialized tissues for detecting vibrations or scents. While no fossil evidence directly supports this, it is not beyond the realm of possibility given the range of sensory adaptations seen in modern reptiles and birds. Others have imagined it as a thermoregulatory feature, a small surface for releasing heat, though again, its size seems too limited for significant impact. Fringe theories take a different route, suggesting the horn might have been used for intimidation against prey, making Ceratosaurus appear slightly larger or more unusual, potentially startling smaller animals in close encounters. There are even speculative reconstructions that depict the horn as part of a larger soft tissue crest extending along the skull, now lost to time, which could have radically altered its appearance in life. What makes the mystery of the Ceratosaurus horn so enduring is that it does not fit neatly into any one category. It is not large enough to be a primary weapon, not elaborate enough to be a definitive display structure, and not positioned in a way that suggests an obvious mechanical role. Yet, its consistent presence across specimens and its prominent position on the skull imply that it was important enough to be maintained through evolutionary pressures in a predator's design. Some fossils hint at subtle variations in horn size and shape, leading to questions about whether these differences reflect age, sex, or even seasonal changes. Could males have grown larger, more colorful horns during breeding seasons, shedding or reducing them afterward? Could juveniles have lacked the feature entirely, developing it only upon reaching maturity? These patterns, if proven, would support a display or social signaling function, but the fossil sample remains too small to draw final conclusions. Adding to the puzzle is the fact that Ceratosaurus was not the only theropod with a nasal ornament. Smaller crests and ridges appear in other species, sometimes accompanied by more elaborate cranial displays. This raises a broader question. Was nasal ornamentation in theropods part of a larger evolutionary trend tied to communication and visual signals, or was it a quirk of individual lineages, each adapting the feature for its own needs? In museum displays, Ceratosaurus often stands poised mid-stride, head tilted, horn catching the light. Visitors may not linger on it, focusing instead on the teeth or the sinuous tail. Yet that modest projection, less dramatic than the horns of later dinosaurs but no less deliberate, may hold clues to behaviors we can only imagine. Was it a silent signal to rivals across a floodplain? A marker of status in the murky waters of a Jurassic river? Or something so ordinary to the animal's world that we struggle to see it for what it was? Until the rock yields more complete specimens, perhaps even with preserved skin or keratin sheaths that reveal color and texture, The horn of Ceratosaurus will remain an emblem of unanswered questions. Its function, like so many features from deep time, lies somewhere between the practical and the symbolic. A reminder that in the Jurassic, even the smallest detail of a predator's face could carry a meaning we have yet to understand. Under the relentless sun of the American West, the Badlands of the Morrison Formation stretch to the horizon, vast, barren expanses of ochre and gray. Today, they seem lifeless. But in the late Jurassic, this was one of the most vibrant ecosystems on Earth. Herds of immense sauropods roamed here, accompanied by stegosaurs, ornithopods, and swift theropods. The rivers teemed with crocodile-like predators, while the skies were patrolled by early pterosaurs. And then, quite suddenly, in geological terms, something changed. The fossil record within the Morrison Formation reveals a distinct and puzzling shift in biodiversity, one that has left paleontologists debating its cause for decades. The Morrison Formation spans much of the western United States, from New Mexico to Montana, and preserves over 10 million years of Jurassic history. In its lower layers, the diversity of dinosaurs is striking. Multiple sauropod species coexisting with a variety of stegosaurs, small herbivores, and predators of varying sizes. Yet in higher layers, this variety narrows. Certain lineages vanish altogether, replaced by fewer, more dominant species. Some sauropods appear to flourish, while others disappear. Predators, too, show changes in abundance, with Allosaurus maintaining dominance, even as other theropods decline. Mainstream explanations for this shift often begin with climate change. Geological evidence suggests that the Morrison ecosystem transitioned from a relatively wet, lush environment to a more seasonal, drought-prone one. This shift would have altered vegetation patterns, favoring plants more resilient to dry conditions. Such a change could have driven some herbivores to extinction while giving an advantage to those able to feed on tougher, more fibrous plants. The ripple effect on predators would have been inevitable as prey diversity decreased. Other researchers point to changes in river systems and sedimentation. Shifting waterways could have altered the distribution of food and water sources, forcing animals into new migratory patterns. Those unable to adapt may have been pushed out of the ecosystem or died out entirely. These environmental pressures may have led to a kind of ecological streamlining where only the most adaptable species persisted. Yet the pattern is not as straightforward as a simple decline. In some areas, the fossil record shows brief spikes in diversity followed by sharp drops, as if the ecosystem repeatedly recovered and then faltered again. This has led to speculation about localized ecological disturbances, perhaps periodic droughts, volcanic activity, or disease outbreaks that could have caused repeated disruptions over thousands of years. The most speculative ideas go further still. Some paleontologists have proposed that competition from migrating species may have played a role. If dinosaurs from other parts of the world moved into Morrison habitats, they could have displaced resident species either through direct competition or by introducing new diseases. The Morrison Formation sat at a paleogeographic crossroads during the Jurassic, with possible connections to other continental landmasses via temporary land bridges and shifting seaways. Could the biodiversity shift reflect not just local change, but global movement? Fringe theories entertain even more dramatic scenarios. One suggests that subtle changes in atmospheric composition, such as fluctuations in oxygen or carbon dioxide, might have altered plant growth and nutrient content, indirectly reshaping the food web. Another, more controversial idea proposes that an unrecorded asteroid or comet impact could have caused short-term climatic chaos, selectively affecting species based on their diets, physiology, or reproductive strategies. While no direct evidence supports such an impact, the abruptness of the shift in certain localities invites the question: The enigma deepens when considering that some lineages, like Allosaurus and Diplodocus, persisted relatively unchanged through the transition, while others vanished without a clear ecological reason. Why did some of the most specialized sauropods survive while more generalized feeders disappeared? Was it luck, behavioral flexibility, or an adaptation we have yet to recognize? Adding to the mystery is the patchiness of the fossil record itself. The Morrison Formation is vast, and fossil preservation is uneven. In some sites, whole skeletons are found in dense bone beds, suggesting catastrophic die-offs, while in others, remains are scattered and rare. These differences make it difficult to determine whether the biodiversity shift was a sudden event across the region, a gradual process, or a mosaic of local changes occurring at different times. In museum halls, the Morrison dinosaurs stand together as if frozen in a single moment of time: towering Brachiosaurus, spike-tailed Stegosaurus, sharp-toothed Allosaurus. Yet, the fossil layers tell a subtler story, one of change and replacement, survival and disappearance. It is a reminder that even the most seemingly stable ecosystems are in constant motion, shaped by forces both visible and invisible. Was the Morrison's biodiversity shift the product of slow environmental transformation, a series of sudden shocks, or a combination of both? Were its survivors simply the best adapted to a harsher, drier world? Or were they the beneficiaries of chance in a game of evolutionary survival? Somewhere beneath the sun-baked rock, in layers yet to be unearthed, the missing pieces of this puzzle may still rest. Until then, the Morrison Formation stands as both a treasure trove of Jurassic life and a silent witness to a change that reshaped its world in ways we are only beginning to understand. In the stillness of a sun-baked plain, a patch of ground lies patterned with shallow depressions, fossilized impressions of nests, each one holding the ghostly outline of eggs. The site is silent now, but in the Jurassic, this would have been alive with sound: the rustle of vegetation underfoot, the low calls of watchful adults, the muffled tapping of hatchlings breaking free from their shells. Across the ancient landscape, colonies of nesting dinosaurs may have gathered year after year, returning to the same grounds in a ritual as old as life itself. But how these colonies were organized, and what roles each member played in them, remains one of the great unanswered questions of paleontology. Fossil sites in places such as Mongolia, Argentina, and the high plains of North America offer tantalizing glimpses into dinosaur reproductive behavior. Some show clusters of nests spaced with surprising regularity, as though arranged with intention. Others contain dozens, sometimes hundreds, of eggs preserved in neat circular patterns, suggesting coordinated nesting events rather than scattered, solitary laying. These arrangements imply a level of organization that goes beyond instinctual digging and depositing. Mainstream interpretations begin with the comparison to modern colonial nesters, birds like penguins or seabirds, and reptiles like some turtles. Nesting colonies can offer advantages: protection in numbers, a shared defense against predators, and the possibility of coordinated hatching to overwhelm threats with sheer numbers. If Jurassic dinosaurs behaved similarly, gathering in groups may have been a crucial strategy for ensuring that at least some offspring survived in a world teeming with danger. Spacing between nests might also have been deliberate, ensuring that adults could move between them without crushing eggs, or that hatchlings had space to emerge without interference. Some paleontologists suggest that certain dinosaurs returned to the same nesting sites year after year, much like modern sea turtles, creating multi-generational nurseries where the ground itself bore the layered record of countless breeding seasons. Yet the evidence also raises questions. Were these colonies organized by species, or did multiple dinosaur types share the same nesting grounds? Did different species nest at different times of year, or did they coexist in close proximity, relying on size, numbers, or mutual alertness to deter predators? Without direct observation, the dynamics of these communities remain speculative. The matter of parental care adds another layer to the mystery. Some fossil sites preserve adults found near or even atop nests, hinting at active guarding or brooding. Others lack such associations, suggesting that some species may have laid their eggs and departed, leaving the young to fend for themselves once hatched. If some dinosaurs tended their nests while others did not, what determined the difference? Body size, environment, or evolutionary lineage? Speculative ideas explore the possibility of complex social structures within colonies. Could certain individuals have acted as sentinels, watching for predators while others incubated eggs? Were there unspoken rules about nesting territory, enforced by ritualized displays or physical confrontation? Modern colonial nesters sometimes establish hierarchies, with dominant individuals claiming the safest spots. Might similar patterns have existed among dinosaurs? Fringe theories go further, suggesting that some dinosaurs may have synchronized their nesting cycles with environmental cues, seasonal floods, plant blooms, or even lunar phases, to maximize survival odds. If true, such timing would require a degree of environmental awareness and internal coordination far beyond what we typically imagine for reptiles, aligning them more closely with the behavioral complexity of certain bird species. In rare cases, fossilized embryos preserved inside eggs have provided clues to development times, which could, in turn, influence theories about colony organization. If hatching was staggered over weeks, the colony would have needed to remain active and vigilant for extended periods, increasing the importance of cooperation. If hatching was highly synchronized, the entire colony might have experienced a brief, intense surge of activity, with thousands of vulnerable hatchlings emerging at once, a feast for predators, but one in which sheer numbers might overwhelm the threat. Geology offers hints about the environments chosen for these colonies. Many fossil nests are found in ancient floodplains, lake margins, or coastal areas, places where moist soils made digging easier and where vegetation or water could help regulate temperature. But such locations also carried risks. Seasonal flooding could wipe out entire generations in a single event. Did dinosaurs choose these spots for the same reasons modern animals sometimes take such risks? Because the advantages outweighed the dangers? Even the eggs themselves hold mysteries. Differences in shape, size, and shell texture suggest adaptations to specific nesting styles, buried in sand, covered in vegetation, or left partially exposed. If multiple strategies existed within a single colony, how did species avoid interference with one another's nests? And what might these differences reveal about how each species balanced the trade-offs between protection, incubation temperature, and hatchling readiness? Today, the fossilized nesting grounds are silent, their eggs emptied long ago, the parents gone for over 150 million years. Yet in the arrangement of the nests, in the careful spacing and the uniformity of their construction, there is a hint of order, an echo of an organizational system we can sense but not fully see. Were these colonies loosely assembled gatherings of instinct-driven animals, or the coordinated breeding grounds of complex, socially aware creatures? Did the dinosaurs communicate, cooperate, and defend their young in ways that would surprise us? Or are we mistaking the patterns left by chance and preservation for deliberate design? The answers, if they still exist, lie buried in the earth, perhaps in a site where an entire nesting colony is preserved in a moment of time, its adults, eggs, and young frozen together in stone. Until then, the organization of dinosaur nesting colonies remains an enigma, a fragment of behavior preserved only in scattered traces, hinting at social worlds as rich and intricate as the creatures themselves. Far beneath the calm surface of the Jurassic seas, life once thrived in dazzling abundance. Shoals of fish flashing like silver ribbons, ammonites drifting with curling shells, marine reptiles gliding effortlessly through the water. But in the layers of rock that record this ancient world, there are moments when the story changes abruptly. Dark, organic-rich sediments appear, laid down during periods when large parts of the ocean became almost completely devoid of oxygen. These are the traces of oceanic anoxic events, mysterious intervals when vast stretches of the sea turned deadly, smothering marine life and reshaping ecosystems on a global scale. Geologists can identify these events in the rock record by their telltale black shales, formed when the normal recycling of organic matter on the seafloor stalled. In oxygen-rich conditions, dead organisms are broken down by bacteria, their carbon recycled into the environment. But during anoxic events, oxygen levels dropped so low that this decay halted and organic matter accumulated, preserved in the sediment for millions of years. Chemical signatures, shifts in carbon and sulfur isotopes, reveal that these events were not isolated local phenomena, but widespread crises that affected oceans across the globe. Mainstream explanations point to climate change as a key driver. In the Jurassic, volcanic activity was intense, particularly along the rift zones where the supercontinent Pangaea was breaking apart. Massive eruptions could have released enormous amounts of carbon dioxide, warming the planet and altering global weather patterns. Warmer waters hold less oxygen, and increased rainfall could have washed nutrients into the seas, triggering blooms of plankton. As these organisms died and sank, their decay would have consumed what little oxygen remained, tipping the balance into anoxic collapse. Ocean circulation may also have played a role. In a warmer world, the mixing between surface waters and the deep ocean can weaken. Without this mixing, oxygen-rich surface layers fail to replenish the depths, creating stagnant, suffocating conditions in the abyss. This could have happened gradually, or in pulses, explaining why some anoxic events appear in the fossil record as short-lived, repeated episodes, rather than one prolonged catastrophe. Yet the mystery is far from solved. Some anoxic intervals seem to have occurred without clear signs of massive volcanism or extreme climate shifts, hinting that other forces might have been at work. Could subtle changes in continental positions have disrupted ocean currents enough to spark these events? Were they linked to shifts in sea level that altered the chemistry of shallow continental shelves? Or might they have been triggered by biological innovations, new plankton species producing different kinds of organic matter, altering the balance of oxygen consumption in the oceans? Speculative ideas go even further. Some researchers have considered whether extraterrestrial impacts could have contributed, stirring sediments, releasing methane from the sea floor, or clouding the skies and cooling the planet before rapid warming resumed. While direct evidence for such impacts during specific Jurassic anoxic events remains elusive, the possibility underscores how complex and interwoven the causes may have been. The effects on marine life were profound. Fossil records from before and after these events show dramatic shifts in species composition. Some lineages, such as certain ammonites and marine reptiles, seem to have weathered the crises relatively well, while others vanished entirely from the record. In the aftermath, survivors often radiated into new forms, suggesting that these events, while destructive, may also have been catalysts for evolutionary change. Intriguingly, not all parts of the ocean were equally affected. Evidence from certain Jurassic deposits suggests that while deep waters were oxygen-starved, shallow coastal regions may have remained habitable, acting as refuges where life could persist. This patchiness raises questions about how interconnected or isolated different marine ecosystems really were during these events. Some paleontologists wonder whether anoxic events might have had ripple effects beyond the seas. Large-scale die-offs of marine plankton could have disrupted atmospheric carbon dioxide levels, feeding back into climate systems and altering conditions on land. Could these oceanic crises have influenced the course of terrestrial evolution as well, shaping the environments in which dinosaurs, early mammals, and Jurassic plants lived? Fringe interpretations push the boundaries of current evidence, imagining feedback loops so extreme that they approached tipping points for the entire planet. Cycles of warming and cooling, oxygen loss and recovery, perhaps even periodic near collapses of the global biosphere. While such scenarios remain speculative, they serve as reminders of how interconnected Earth's systems are and how fragile stability can be on geological timescales. Today, the remnants of these events lie locked in stone, bands of dark shale running through cliff faces in Europe, South America, and the ancient seabeds near the coasts of what is now Palestine. Geologists split the rock and see not just layers of sediment, but layers of silence, where the usual signs of thriving marine life are muted or absent. The question lingers: were these oceanic anoxic events predictable consequences of Earth's shifting climate and geology, or were they triggered by rare, unpredictable combinations of factors that will never repeat in exactly the same way? Could they have been slow-building crises visible only in hindsight, or sudden cascading failures of the marine environment? Until the ocean floors yield more of their ancient secrets, we are left with fragments, chemical traces, fossil gaps, and black stone pages in the planet's history. They tell us that, even in the age of dinosaurs, the seas could turn hostile without warning, reshaping life on a global scale. What remains hidden is the precise chain of events that could darken oceans across the world, and whether such a mystery could ever unfold again. In the quiet halls of a museum, a mounted Brachiosaurus towers above the visitors. Its immense frame seems frozen mid-stride, its neck arcing high toward an unseen canopy. The bones, meticulously assembled from fossils found in the Morrison Formation, are a testament to engineering on a biological scale, a lattice of vertebrae, ligaments, and muscle that could extend more than 9 meters in some species. Yet, for all the precision in the reconstruction, one question has never been definitively answered. How did these giants truly hold their necks in life? The sauropod neck is among the most extraordinary adaptations in the history of life on Earth. Composed of elongated cervical vertebrae with air-filled chambers to reduce weight, it allowed these herbivores to reach food sources unavailable to other dinosaurs. For decades, artistic depictions showed them with swan-like curves, lifting their heads high to browse from the tops of Jurassic trees. This image became iconic, shaping public imagination. But in recent years, biomechanical studies have challenged that view, sparking a debate that reaches deep into paleontology's most intricate puzzles. Mainstream anatomical analysis begins with the bones themselves. By examining the articulation of the vertebrae, researchers can estimate the range of motion. Some studies suggest that the joints between neck vertebrae were not as flexible vertically as once thought, limiting the ability to hold the head high for extended periods. In this interpretation, many sauropods may have carried their necks more horizontally, sweeping side to side to graze across wide areas without moving their massive bodies, a highly efficient feeding strategy in open floodplains. Other scientists counter that the bones alone do not tell the full story. Ligaments, cartilage, and musculature, none of which fossilize well, could have significantly increased flexibility and support. Comparisons with modern animals like giraffes and certain birds suggest that living tissue can dramatically alter posture potential. If sauropods had similar adaptations, they might have been capable of both low browsing and high-reaching feeding, shifting posture according to need. Then there is the question of physiology. Holding the head high would require pumping blood up the long neck to the brain, a feat that would demand extraordinary cardiovascular power. Some biomechanical models suggest that maintaining such high vertical posture for long periods might have been metabolically costly, possibly limiting it to short bursts rather than a default stance. If so, perhaps the dramatic tree-browsing pose was an occasional behavior rather than a constant one. Yet, not all sauropods were built alike. Brachiosaurus, with its longer forelimbs, naturally angled its body upward, making a high neck posture more feasible. Others, like Diplodocus, had longer tails and more horizontally balanced frames, better suited to low browsing. Could neck posture, then, have varied not only between species, but also with age, habitat, and seasonal availability of vegetation? Speculative theories take the debate into less conventional territory. Some researchers have suggested that sauropods might have used their necks for social or reproductive display, raising them high in visual signals to rivals or mates. Others imagine them engaging in neck-based combat, similar to giraffes, using the weight and momentum of the neck to deliver powerful blows. While plausible in theory, fossil evidence for such behavior is scarce, leaving these ideas in the realm of possibility but not proof. Fringe interpretations extend the discussion to aquatic or semi-aquatic lifestyles, proposing that some sauropods could have used buoyancy to help support their necks in water, freeing them to feed on shoreline vegetation without the strain of full gravity. While the consensus has moved away from the idea of primarily aquatic sauropods, it is possible that certain species frequented wetlands, using water to assist in extended high-neck postures. What complicates the matter further is that neck posture is not simply an anatomical question. It is also a behavioral one. Even if the neck was capable of extreme vertical or horizontal positions, how often were they used? Did daily feeding involve slow, sweeping motions at mid-height, punctuated by occasional high reaches to strip leaves from the tallest trees? Or did posture vary in response to competition, with dominant individuals claiming the best browsing spots while others fed lower? Trackway evidence and fossilized plant distributions can offer indirect hints. In regions where tall conifers dominated, high browsing would have been advantageous. In fern-rich floodplains, low sweeping would make more sense. Yet sauropods lived in dynamic ecosystems where vegetation shifted over time, suggesting that adaptability and posture could have been as important as specialization. Modern reconstructions often settle somewhere between extremes, showing sauropods with necks angled upward but not fully vertical, a compromise between biomechanical constraints and ecological plausibility. Still, these are models built from incomplete data, subject to change with each new fossil discovery. A perfectly preserved sauropod neck, complete with impressions of cartilage and soft tissue, could radically alter our understanding. For now, the mystery remains open. Did the sauropod neck serve primarily as a vast grazing arm, sweeping the landscape with efficiency? Was it a towering tool for reaching the highest leaves, a display organ, or an all-purpose instrument of survival in a competitive Jurassic world? The truth may be a combination of all these roles, layered with nuances we have yet to uncover. Somewhere in the stone record, perhaps in an undiscovered quarry, perhaps beneath sediments still untouched, there may be a fossil that freezes a sauropod in life, neck arched or stretched, offering an unambiguous answer. Until then, the posture of these ancient giants remains poised between evidence and imagination, a question mark rising as high as the trees they may or may not have fed upon. High in the rugged cliffs of what was once the floor of the Jurassic Ocean, bands of dark basalt cut through lighter sedimentary layers like scars in the stone. These ancient lava flows are silent now, their heat long spent, but they are the frozen remains of forces that once reshaped the planet. In the Jurassic, the supercontinent Pangaea was breaking apart, and along its rift zones, the Earth split open. From these wounds, colossal volumes of molten rock spilled forth, releasing plumes of gas and ash into the atmosphere, an immense, planet-wide breath that may have altered the course of life itself. Evidence of this volcanism is scattered across the globe. Vast basalt plateaus in Africa and South America, buried volcanic layers beneath the Atlantic seafloor, and mineral-rich ash beds preserved in places like North America's Morrison Formation. Geochemical analysis reveals spikes in atmospheric carbon dioxide during certain intervals of the Jurassic, hinting that volcanic outgassing was not just a local phenomenon, but a global one. These events may have driven profound climate shifts, warming the planet, altering rainfall patterns, and reshaping ecosystems on land and sea. Mainstream interpretations see volcanic activity as a key driver of the Jurassic's greenhouse climate. Large igneous provinces, massive regions flooded by lava over relatively short geological timescales, could have released billions of tons of CO2, trapping more heat in the atmosphere. Warmer global temperatures would have expanded tropical and subtropical zones, altered ocean currents, and increased humidity in some regions, while pushing others toward aridity. Such changes could explain the spread of certain plant groups and the shifting ranges of dinosaurs, marine reptiles, and other fauna during this time. But volcanism's influence may not have been one-directional. While long-term outgassing warms the climate, massive eruptions also release sulfur dioxide and other aerosols high into the atmosphere. These particles can reflect sunlight, causing short-lived cooling events. Could the Jurassic have been punctuated by brief, volcanic winters, followed by longer warming phases? Fossil evidence of sudden disruptions in plant growth, coupled with layers of volcanic ash, suggests that some ecosystems may indeed have endured such climatic whiplash. Some researchers propose that volcanic activity could have triggered more subtle environmental changes. Ash falling over vast areas may have altered soil chemistry, enriching it with minerals in some regions while rendering it toxic in others. Heavy metals released during eruptions could have affected marine food webs, influencing the distribution of plankton, the base of the oceanic food chain. Did such changes ripple upward, affecting the abundance of fish, marine reptiles, and ultimately even the predators on land that depended on coastal ecosystems? More speculative theories consider the possibility that volcanic gases could have altered atmospheric oxygen levels. While the Jurassic is generally thought to have had oxygen concentrations close to or slightly higher than today's, large-scale eruptions might have caused fluctuations that challenged certain species while favoring others. Could this have played a role in the rise and fall of specific dinosaur groups, or in the persistence of some lineages through environmental upheaval? There is also the question of timing. Some intervals of heightened volcanic activity coincide with shifts in biodiversity and sediment deposition, but others do not. This inconsistency fuels debate. Were volcanoes the primary cause of these changes, or did they act in concert with other forces, tectonic shifts, sea level changes, even astronomical cycles that influenced Earth's climate? Fringe interpretations go further, suggesting that volcanic events during the Jurassic may have been far more episodic and intense than the geologic record currently shows. They speculate about massive, rapid outpourings of lava that could have released enough greenhouse gases to push the climate into sudden, extreme warming phases, potentially linked to oceanic anoxic events. While direct evidence for such rapid pulses is scarce, the possibility remains that our current sampling of the rock record may be missing key intervals. In the fossil record, the effects of these climatic swings are not always obvious. Some ecosystems appear to have been remarkably resilient, with little turnover despite nearby volcanic activity. Others show abrupt changes in species composition, with some plant and animal groups disappearing while others proliferate. This patchwork response suggests that the impact of volcanism may have been highly regional, devastating in some places, but muted in others, a complexity that makes its role in shaping the Jurassic world all the more difficult to untangle. Standing at the base of a Jurassic lava flow, the scale of the event becomes tangible. Each cooled layer represents a flood of molten rock that once poured across the land, its heat and gases rising into the skies. The same forces that built new landscapes may also have disrupted the delicate balance of climate and life. But how often did these eruptions truly tip the scales? Were they the architects of long-term climate patterns, or just one voice among many in the chorus of Earth's shifting systems? Somewhere, buried in layers of basalt and ash, may be the chemical fingerprints of answers, records of gases trapped in ancient minerals, ready to tell us precisely what filled the Jurassic air. Until those clues are fully uncovered, the story of how volcanism shaped the climate of the Age of Giants remains incomplete. A reminder that even the mightiest creatures of the past lived under skies and seasons that could change with the Earth's own restless breath. In the heart of the Morrison Formation, the landscape stretches wide beneath a relentless sun. Layer upon layer of stone tells the story of ancient rivers, floodplains, and droughts. Here, embedded in the baked earth, lie the immense bones of Camarasaurus, a sauropod whose sturdy frame and blunt-snouted skull make it one of the most recognizable giants of the Jurassic. Its remains are found across a vast geographic range, from what is now the American Southwest to the high plains further north. But this broad distribution raises an intriguing question. Did these massive herbivores travel great distances in life, following a seasonal rhythm across the prehistoric continent? Camarasaurus was no delicate creature. Its thick, columnar limbs supported a body weighing up to 20 metric tons, its neck shorter but more muscular than that of the slender Diplodocus. It fed on a wide variety of vegetation, suggesting a certain ecological flexibility. Yet fossil evidence hints that flexibility alone may not explain its presence across such diverse environments. Tooth wear patterns differ between populations found in different regions, suggesting changes in diet that could reflect seasonal shifts in available plants. Was this the signature of migration, a movement from one biome to another as the climate and vegetation cycled through the year? Isotopic analysis of fossilized teeth offers one of the strongest lines of evidence for such behavior. By studying oxygen isotopes locked in tooth enamel, scientists can infer variations in water composition that an animal experienced over its lifetime. In Camarasaurus, these variations appear to match patterns expected from long-distance travel between lowland and upland regions. The data suggest a seasonal loop, perhaps hundreds of kilometers long, in which herds moved toward wetter, more verdant areas during the dry season and returned when rains replenished the lowlands. If true, such migrations would have required complex social behavior and an intimate understanding of the environment, knowledge passed down through generations. But how would a creature of such size and energy needs have navigated these vast distances? Did they follow ancient river corridors, much as elephants today trace the paths to seasonal waterholes? Or did they rely on sensory cues, detecting distant thunderstorms or changes in wind-borne scents of vegetation? Mainstream interpretations lean toward environmental necessity as the driver. The Morrison ecosystem was a patchwork of floodplains, semi-arid uplands, and riverine forests. Seasonal climate extremes could have forced Camarasaurus to relocate to avoid food shortages or water scarcity. In this sense, migration would have been a survival strategy, an immense but calculated gamble of energy expenditure versus resource gain. Yet, other possibilities linger at the edges of the debate. Could some movements have been tied to reproduction, with certain regions serving as ancient calving grounds? The discovery of juvenile Camarasaurus fossils clustered in specific areas has led some to speculate about dedicated nursery zones, perhaps safer from predators or richer in tender plant growth. If these sites were distant from primary feeding territories, Migration might have been an annual necessity not just for sustenance, but for the continuation of the species. More speculative still is the idea that not all Camarasaurus herds behaved the same way. Some populations may have been largely sedentary, living within a relatively small home range where resources were abundant year-round. Others, in more marginal environments, might have undertaken great journeys. This could explain why the isotopic evidence is not uniform across all studied specimens, hinting at varied lifestyles adapted to local conditions. Fringe theories push the discussion further, suggesting that Camarasaurus migrations might have been influenced by environmental phenomena we do not fully understand, such as subtle shifts in Earth's magnetic field or atmospheric cues lost to time. While no direct evidence supports these ideas, they remind us that the sensory world of these giants may have been richer and more complex than we can easily reconstruct. If migration did occur, it would have shaped the entire Morrison ecosystem. Predators like Allosaurus and Ceratosaurus might have tracked the herds, timing their own movements to match the seasonal abundance of prey. Plant communities, too, could have been influenced, with sauropod feeding patterns affecting the growth and regeneration of certain species. Even the distribution of smaller animals, from mammals to insects, may have been linked to the shadow of these great wanderers. Yet questions remain stubbornly unresolved. Fossil trackways, those frozen moments of ancient movement, can offer tantalizing hints, but they are often difficult to interpret. A long line of footprints might suggest travel, but is it evidence of migration or simply a local search for food and water? Likewise, the absence of fossils in certain areas may reflect gaps in preservation rather than genuine absence in life. The truth may lie in the interplay between environmental constraint and biological capacity. Camarasaurus had the anatomy to move across great distances and the dietary flexibility to exploit different plant communities. But whether migration was a universal behavior or a regional adaptation remains uncertain. Somewhere in the unexcavated expanses of the Morrison Formation, there may be a fossil site holding the key, a concentrated layer of bones from individuals of all ages, deposited far from known feeding grounds, perhaps alongside plant fossils from a distant biome. Until such a discovery is made, we are left with the image of these massive sauropods moving in slow procession across the Jurassic landscape, their great silhouettes fading into the heat shimmer, bound for a destination we can only guess at. Beneath the rolling green hills of Oxfordshire, England, the soil holds fragments of a predator that once strode across the Jurassic world. Its name, Megalosaurus, is etched into the history of paleontology as the first dinosaur formally described by science, a creature that opened the door to an entirely new understanding of Earth's past. But even after nearly 2 centuries of study, the actual appearance of this ancient hunter remains cloaked in uncertainty, shaped as much by gaps in the fossil record as by the shifting interpretations of each generation of researchers. The first bones were uncovered in the early 19th century, pieces of a jaw, scattered vertebrae, fragments of limb. To scientists of the time, unfamiliar with the concept of dinosaurs, these remains seemed to suggest a giant lizard, a monstrous reptile dragging its belly close to the ground. Early reconstructions depicted Megalosaurus as a sprawling, 4-legged beast, more akin to a crocodile than the agile bipedal predator we now believe it to have been. But how much of what we think we know today is the product of evidence, and how much is still shaped by assumption? Modern reconstructions portray Megalosaurus as a formidable carnivore, approximately 9 meters long, with a massive skull armed with serrated teeth, its body balanced over powerful hind limbs, and a long, muscular tail for counterbalance. This vision owes much to comparisons with better-known relatives like Torvosaurus and Allosaurus. Yet, here lies the core of the problem. Megalosaurus is known only from incomplete remains. No complete skeleton has ever been found, and every depiction, however detailed, is an educated guess built upon the anatomy of similar theropods. Could we be misjudging its proportions entirely? Some paleontologists have speculated that Megalosaurus may have been more robust than its relatives, with thicker limbs and a deeper chest, better suited for ambush rather than long pursuit. Others propose a more gracile form, an agile, lightly built predator capable of bursts of speed. Both interpretations fit within the limited fossil evidence, and without new, more complete discoveries, both remain plausible. Even its head is a subject of debate. Reconstructions often show a broad, heavy skull, but subtle differences in the jaw fragments hint at variations in shape that could alter our perception of the animal's hunting style. Did Megalosaurus possess a deep, crushing bite for subduing large prey, or was it better suited for slicing through flesh, relying on repeated strikes rather than overpowering force? And then there is the question of its skin and external features, details almost entirely absent from the fossil record. For decades, artists draped Megalosaurus in thick reptilian scales, a visual legacy inherited from its early lizard-like portrayals. However, the discovery of filament-like protofeathers in related theropods has prompted speculation that Megalosaurus too may have borne some form of primitive feathering, at least in patches. If true, this would radically alter its appearance, giving it a more bird-like silhouette and hinting at complex thermoregulation strategies. The color of Megalosaurus is another mystery locked beyond the reach of direct evidence. In the absence of preserved pigments, artists have rendered it in earthy browns and greens, colors associated with camouflage in forested or open environments. Yet some scientists have raised the possibility that Jurassic predators could have displayed bold patterns or even iridescence, using visual signaling for courtship or intimidation. Such speculation, while unprovable, reminds us that the living animal may have looked nothing like the muted reconstructions we are accustomed to seeing. Mainstream paleontology seeks to fill in these gaps with caution, grounding every inference in comparative anatomy and the known limits of biomechanics. Still, alternative theories, some more fringe than others, occasionally challenge these assumptions. Could Megalosaurus have been semi-aquatic, hunting along riverbanks and shallow coastal waters, explaining why its fossils are often found in what were once marine sediments? Might it have had a more unusual posture, one not yet captured in any skeletal mount? Even the possibility of sexual dimorphism, differences in appearance between males and females, has been raised. If true, it could mean that fossils attributed to different theropod species might in fact represent different sexes of Megalosaurus, further complicating our understanding of its true form. Such a scenario would not be unprecedented. Many modern animals exhibit striking visual differences between sexes, and without a large enough sample size, paleontologists may misinterpret these variations as separate taxa. The persistence of this mystery is not due to lack of interest, quite the opposite. Megalosaurus has been the subject of study, debate, and artistic rendering for nearly 200 years. Yet the very fact that it was discovered so early in paleontological history may have worked against it. The original specimens were often handled without the rigorous preservation standards we expect today, and some material has been lost or damaged. Later finds, though tantalizing, have never yielded the complete picture scientists long for. What might change our understanding is a single, exceptional discovery: a near-complete skeleton emerging from the rocks of the English countryside, preserved with enough detail to confirm or overturn our current assumptions. Until then, we are left with a composite image, part fact, part inference, and part imagination. The Megalosaurus of our minds may be close to the truth, or it may be as distorted as those first, lumbering reconstructions of the 19th century. Standing before its reconstructed jaws in a museum, one can't help but wonder, what did this predator truly look like as it moved through the forests and floodplains of the Jurassic? Were we to see it in the flesh, would we recognize it instantly? Or would we find ourselves staring at something wholly unexpected? a reminder of just how much of the deep past remains concealed beneath the stone. In the sandstone outcrops of the Morrison Formation, where the whisper of wind over exposed rock mingles with the crunch of loose shale underfoot, the remains of a small, swift dinosaur have lain undisturbed for over 150 million years. Dryosaurus, a nimble herbivore with long legs and a sleek, streamlined body, once darted between conifer trunks and fern thickets, its large eyes scanning for danger. Though overshadowed by the titans of its time, towering sauropods and apex predators, it holds a mystery that continues to puzzle paleontologists. How fast did it grow, and why? On the surface, Dryosaurus seems straightforward. It was lightly built, adapted for speed rather than brute force, and likely relied on its agility to evade predators like Allosaurus. Its skeleton, with its long hind limbs and stiffened tail, speaks of an animal designed to run. Yet, when researchers began cutting thin slices from its fossilized bones, examining the microscopic growth rings locked inside, they found something unexpected. These growth rings, much like those of trees, record patterns of seasonal development. In some Dryosaurus specimens, the rings are widely spaced, suggesting rapid growth in the early years of life, possibly reaching near adult size in just a few short years. In others, the spacing is tighter, implying a slower, more measured pace of development. Why such variation in a single species? Was it simply individual difference, or a deeper pattern linked to environment, climate, or evolutionary strategy? Mainstream interpretations focus on survival. A fast growth rate would allow juveniles to outgrow the vulnerable stages of life quickly, reducing the time they spent as easy prey. In ecosystems where predators were numerous and varied, speed of growth could be a decisive advantage. But growing too quickly has its costs. It demands a constant, high-quality food supply, and it risks structural weaknesses in bone or muscle. Could Dryosaurus have been balancing on the edge of such a trade-off, adjusting its growth according to environmental pressures? Some paleontologists suggest that the variation in growth rates might reflect differences between populations living in different parts of the Morrison ecosystem. The formation itself spans a vast area and multiple climate zones in the late Jurassic, from semi-arid floodplains to lush river-fed forests. Perhaps individuals in food-rich areas could afford to grow faster, while those in harsher environments took a slower route to adulthood. But other more speculative possibilities arise. Could Dryosaurus have undergone a form of boom-and-bust growth, accelerating during favorable seasons and slowing dramatically during droughts or harsh winters? Modern reptiles and some birds can adjust growth rates to environmental conditions, and bone histology suggests this pattern might have been present in some dinosaurs as well. If true, it would paint Dryosaurus as a far more flexible and adaptive creature than its simple body plan suggests. There is also the question of social structure. Some scientists have proposed that Dryosaurus may have formed loose herds or family groups, where juvenile survival depended not only on speed and stealth, but on coordinated behavior. In such a scenario, growth rates might be tied to group dynamics, individuals maturing at different speeds to maintain a mix of sizes and roles within the group, much like some modern herd animals. Yet no definitive evidence of such behavior has been found, leaving this an intriguing but unconfirmed idea. More fringe theories, though treated with caution, consider the possibility that Dryosaurus's growth strategy was influenced by factors we cannot yet detect: seasonal migrations, unusual food sources, or even selective pressures from predators that have yet to be identified in the fossil record. Could there have been an as-yet undiscovered predator, smaller and faster than Allosaurus, that targeted only young Dryosaurus, driving a need for rapid early growth? Or might the growth rings reflect not environmental stress at all, but an internal biological rhythm now lost in its modern relatives? The challenge lies in the scarcity of well-preserved specimens representing the full range of life stages. Most Dryosaurus fossils are partial, often limited to isolated bones or fragmentary skeletons. Without a large sample size, patterns are difficult to confirm, and each new find has the potential to shift the picture entirely. It is possible that what we interpret as variation in growth rate could be the result of sampling bias, differences in how fossils were preserved, collected, or studied over the decades. And yet, the enigma persists. In a world dominated by enormous and often slow-maturing giants, Dryosaurus may have been playing by a different set of rules that allowed it to thrive in the shadows of its towering contemporaries. Understanding its growth rate is more than a matter of statistics. It is a window into how small dinosaurs survived in ecosystems where danger was ever present and competition was fierce. As we look at the cross-section of a Dryosaurus femur under the microscope, its concentric growth lines frozen in stone, it is difficult not to imagine the living animal, its muscles taut as it sprinted across an open plain, its eyes wide and alert. Did it live its life in a rapid surge toward adulthood, each heartbeat fueled by the need to survive another day? Or did it grow in measured steps, adapting to the ebb and flow of its changing world? The answer, if it exists, is still locked within the rocks of the Morrison Formation, waiting for the right fossil to be unearthed. Until then, the growth of Dryosaurus remains not just a question of paleobiology, but a quiet reminder that even the smallest dinosaurs can carry some of the largest mysteries. On the sunlit limestone flats of what is now southern Germany, 150 million years ago, a tiny hunter moved with deliberate grace. Barely the size of a modern chicken, Compsognathus was a creature of delicate bones and slender limbs, its long tail counterbalancing a narrow, pointed head lined with sharp teeth. The surface under its clawed feet would have been warm and uneven, dotted with low vegetation, tidal pools, and the occasional scuttling of lizards and insects. It was a small predator in a dangerous world, a world where even the shadow of a larger carnivore could mean the end. The preserved fossils of Compsognathus are rare treasures, and it is from these few, exquisitely detailed specimens that we attempt to reconstruct its way of life. Found in the Solnhofen limestone, a region famous for trapping ancient life in fine-grained sediment, the remains capture even the most delicate bones. One individual is preserved so well that its last meal, a small lizard, rests within its rib cage, an undeniable clue to its carnivorous habits. Yet, beyond these skeletal hints, the true story of Compsognathus's lifestyle remains uncertain. Mainstream reconstructions depict it as a nimble, ground-dwelling predator, darting through ferns and between rocks in pursuit of small vertebrates and perhaps large insects. Its long legs suggest speed, its forward-facing eyes, precision in hunting. But was it solely a hunter, or also a scavenger, opportunistically feeding on carrion? The evidence is limited, and much of what we imagine is built from comparison to related species and modern analogues. Some paleontologists point to its light skeleton and presumed agility as evidence of a life spent in bursts of pursuit, capturing prey with quick, calculated lunges. Others propose a more patient approach, an animal capable of remaining still for long periods, waiting for a lizard or amphibian to stray too close before striking. Could Compsognathus have combined both strategies, adapting its behavior to the terrain, season, and competition? Adding to the intrigue is the question of habitat. The Solnhofen environment during the late Jurassic was a subtropical archipelago, dotted with lagoons and bordered by shallow seas. Fossil evidence suggests Compsognathus may have lived along these coastal areas, but did it also venture inland, or even onto the small islands scattered across the ancient seaways? Some researchers speculate it might have been capable of short-distance swimming, perhaps to cross narrow channels or escape predators. But no definitive evidence exists. Its social behavior is another mystery. Was Compsognathus a solitary hunter, each individual defending a small range of territory? Or did it operate in loose, temporary groups, taking advantage of sudden surges in prey availability? The fossil record offers no group discoveries to suggest pack-like hunting, but the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Perhaps its size allowed it to avoid the complex territorial disputes of larger predators, slipping quietly through the ecosystem, unnoticed except by those it hunted. More speculative ideas go further. Some have suggested that Compsognathus could have displayed primitive forms of parental care, guarding nests, or even delivering food to newly hatched young. If true, it would place it among the earliest known dinosaurs to demonstrate such behavior, a trait that would later become more common among its avian descendants. But without preserved nests or juvenile specimens clearly linked to adults, this remains an open question. The possibility of feathers, too, cannot be ignored. Though no Compsognathus specimen has been found with feather impressions, its close relatives, including the slightly older Sinosauropteryx from China, bear clear evidence of filament-like coverings. If Compsognathus shared this trait, its appearance would have been strikingly different from the smooth-skinned reconstructions of decades past. Feathers could have served purposes beyond insulation, camouflage among the dappled sunlight, subtle signaling to rivals or mates, even protective coverage for hatchlings. Was the absence of feather impressions in its fossils due to environmental conditions that favored preservation of bone but not soft tissue? Or was Compsognathus genuinely bare-skinned, an exception among its kin? Then there is the matter of its brain. Endocasts of related species suggest a brain well-suited for quick reflexes and keen vision, especially in detecting movement. Could Compsognathus have been a crepuscular hunter, active during dawn and dusk when light levels shifted and prey was abundant? Or was it primarily diurnal, relying on bright daylight to spot the faintest twitch of a lizard's tail? The answers remain speculative, yet each scenario paints a subtly different portrait of how this tiny dinosaur interacted with its world. Even its place in the food chain invites debate. While clearly a predator, Compsognathus itself would have been prey for larger theropods and aerial hunters like pterosaurs. Survival for such a small carnivore would have required not only speed, but an intimate knowledge of its surroundings. Every rock, every hollow log, every escape route through dense undergrowth. Did it learn these paths over time? Or was its range constantly shifting with the seasons? The fossils themselves whisper only fragments of its story. A skeleton here, a preserved stomach there. From these pieces, scientists weave hypotheses, some grounded in anatomy, others in environmental reconstructions. And yet, the truth of Compsognathus's lifestyle, the rhythm of its days, the choices it made to survive, the interactions it had with its world, remains elusive. Perhaps that is the enduring fascination. In the grand narrative of the Jurassic, Compsognathus was no giant, no apex predator. It was a survivor, a thread in the complex web of life whose details we can only partially grasp. And as we study its slender bones under the bright lights of a laboratory, we are left to wonder, was this small predator more cunning, more adaptive than we have yet imagined? Or does its true story still lie hidden in some undiscovered slab of limestone, waiting for the day it will be brought to light? Beneath the dry, fractured layers of ancient sediment, a cluster of fossilized eggs rests in silent perfection. Some are nearly spherical, compact, balanced forms that fit neatly into the palm of a hand. Others, found only a few meters away in the same ancient nesting ground, are elongated, tapering at one end as though designed for a different set of purposes entirely. Time has stripped away their colors, textures, and the lives they once contained, leaving behind stone shells. Yet in their shapes alone lies a question that has lingered for decades. Why would dinosaurs, sharing the same era and often similar environments, produce eggs so strikingly different in form? In modern birds, egg shape is often linked to lifestyle. Ground nesting species tend toward more rounded eggs, while cliff nesting seabirds produce elongated ones that roll in tight circles rather than falling away from the nest. Could such functional reasoning be applied to dinosaurs? It's tempting to draw these parallels, but the fossil record complicates the picture. The Oviraptorosaurs of late Cretaceous Asia, for instance, laid elongated eggs carefully arranged in pairs within circular nests. By contrast, certain sauropods, towering, long-necked giants, produced near-perfect spheres, scattered in clusters with little apparent pattern. Mainstream explanations suggest that egg shape was influenced by the anatomy of the mother's reproductive tract, specifically the shape and width of the oviduct. Elongated eggs may have resulted from a narrower oviduct or a longer period of shell formation, while spherical eggs could have been shaped by shorter formation times and wider passageways. But anatomy may not be the whole story. If this were purely a matter of physiology, why do closely related species sometimes show notable differences in egg shape? Some paleontologists have proposed that the nesting environment played a key role. In dry, open habitats, spherical eggs might be more structurally resistant to pressure from sediment, protecting the developing embryo. In more humid or vegetated areas, elongated eggs could allow for better gas exchange by increasing surface area. Others point to thermal regulation. Perhaps certain shapes retained heat differently, affecting incubation success rates. Still, these are educated guesses, built from a patchwork of fossil finds and modern analogies. The arrangement of eggs adds yet another layer of intrigue. In some fossilized nests, elongated eggs are positioned with remarkable precision, angled upright with their pointed ends facing downward, suggesting deliberate placement by the parents. In contrast, spherical eggs are often found in more haphazard clusters, implying that their shape allowed for less exact positioning without compromising survival. Could this mean that some dinosaurs actively manipulated their eggs while others left them more passively buried? And if so, what does that say about parental care in these species? More speculative theories move beyond the purely functional. Some researchers have wondered whether egg shape could have been influenced by social or reproductive signaling. Perhaps elongated eggs served as visual cues within communal nesting grounds, or spherical ones were easier to conceal. Others imagine that subtle differences in egg shape might have reflected seasonal breeding patterns, with certain shapes better adapted to specific climate conditions within the same region. There is also the possibility that we are missing a vital piece of the puzzle due to the incompleteness of the fossil record. Eggshell preservation is notoriously dependent on environmental conditions. The thin outer layers erode quickly, and many eggs, especially those of smaller species, would have been destroyed long before fossilization. What we see today may be a skewed sample, favoring species and shapes more likely to survive the eons. Could there have been transitional shapes, neither fully spherical nor elongated, that have simply vanished from the record? Comparisons to modern reptiles add further complexity. Crocodilians, the closest living relatives of dinosaurs aside from birds, produce eggs that are generally more elongated than spherical, yet they bury them in vegetation mounds or soil, relying on natural heat for incubation. This raises the question: did some dinosaurs evolve new egg shapes as part of a broader shift toward more active incubation strategies? Fossils of brooding Oviraptorosaurs suggest that at least some species physically warmed their eggs by sitting over them, behavior that might have favored more uniform arrangements and, perhaps, elongated shapes for efficient heat transfer. Yet, there are anomalies that resist neat classification. Some spherical eggs are found in formations, suggesting deliberate placement. Some elongated ones appear scattered, contradicting the assumptions drawn from better preserved sites. And while egg size is often proportionate to the size of the adult, there are cases where relatively small eggs were laid by unexpectedly large species. Could egg shape, and not just size, have been a compromise between the demands of the parent's physiology, the risks of predation, and the environmental challenges of the nesting site? Even within a single nesting ground, variation can be puzzling. In certain fossil beds, spherical and elongated eggs appear side by side, hinting that multiple species nested in close proximity. This raises another question. Did these differences confer any advantage in mixed species colonies? Could predators have learned to target one egg type over another, influencing evolutionary pressures on shape? The mystery deepens when we consider the earliest dinosaur eggs, which were soft-shelled and more flexible in shape. Over millions of years, hard-shelled eggs emerged, allowing for more consistent shapes and improved protection. Was the divergence into spherical and elongated forms simply a continuation of this evolutionary experimentation, with different lineages settling on different solutions to the same problem? Or does it point to a deeper, now lost complexity in dinosaur reproduction? Standing before a display of fossilized nests in a museum, the differences are obvious yet strangely silent. Two shapes, two evolutionary pathways, preserved for 150 million years. Were they simply products of anatomy and environment, or clues to deeper behavioral distinctions between species, distinctions we have yet to fully imagine? The stone shells hold their secrets well, and perhaps they always will. For every study that seems to bring us closer to an answer, new discoveries add fresh contradictions. And so the question lingers: were these shapes the result of pure necessity, or part of a far more intricate story of survival, care, and adaptation that remains hidden in the sands of time? In the quiet shade of a temple courtyard in Eastern Asia, a towering ginkgo tree stands like a sentinel from another world. Its fan-shaped leaves tremble gently in the wind, each one catching the light in a way that seems almost deliberate, as though the tree itself were reflecting on the long centuries it has endured. This is no ordinary plant. It is a living relic, a survivor whose lineage reaches back to the Jurassic period. Long before the first flowering plants appeared, before the great continents had taken their modern shapes, the ancestors of this very tree were already rooted in the earth, witnessing the age of the dinosaurs. The ginkgo is often called a living fossil, but even that phrase fails to capture the depth of its persistence. Fossilized ginkgo leaves, virtually identical to those that fall in golden drifts today, have been found in deposits over 170 million years old. It survived mass extinctions that erased countless other species, climate shifts that turned lush forests into deserts, and the relentless march of evolutionary change. The question that continues to puzzle botanists and paleobotanists alike is not simply how the ginkgo has endured, but why it seems almost uniquely capable of doing so. Mainstream explanations focus on the ginkgo's remarkable resilience. Its leaves and seeds are unusually resistant to pests and diseases. The tree tolerates a wide range of temperatures and soils, and its deep root systems allow it to recover from damage that would kill lesser species. Even its reproductive strategy, separating male and female trees, promotes genetic diversity. But resilience alone cannot account for its unparalleled longevity. Many hardy plants have come and gone in the same span of time. Why did this one persist when nearly all of its Jurassic contemporaries vanished? Some researchers point to the tree's unusual biochemistry. Ginkgo leaves contain compounds not commonly found in other plants: powerful antioxidants, unique terpenoids, and flavonoids that may protect it from environmental stresses. These compounds might also deter herbivory, making the ginkgo unappetizing to many ancient plant-eating animals. Could it be that the ginkgo evolved a kind of chemical armor millions of years ahead of its time, granting it an edge that even mass extinction events could not strip away? The fossil record offers further clues. During the Jurassic, ginkgo trees were widespread, thriving in forests across what are now Asia, Europe, and North America. Yet, after the Cretaceous, their diversity began to wane. By the time humans appeared, only a single species, Ginkgo biloba, remained. Some scholars have wondered if this bottleneck was not a mark of fragility, but rather the opposite. Perhaps the surviving lineage was so well adapted that it outcompeted and replaced its own close relatives. Others speculate that its survival may have been less about competition and more about chance, an accident of geography that placed certain populations in refuges safe from catastrophic events. Then there are the more speculative ideas. Some botanists have noticed that ginkgo trees seem almost indifferent to their surroundings, capable of thriving in both wild mountain valleys and the heart of modern cities. Their tolerance of pollution, poor soil, and irregular water supply is legendary. Could it be that this adaptability is not simply a byproduct of its evolutionary past, but a deliberate trait honed during eras when Earth's climate was far more volatile than today? If so, the ginkgo may carry within its genetic code a living record of strategies that allowed it to navigate ancient environmental chaos, strategies we barely understand. There is also the question of longevity on an individual level. Some ginkgo trees are estimated to be over 1,000 years old, showing no signs of decline. In laboratory studies, older ginkgo trees display almost no cellular aging in certain tissues, suggesting that they may possess mechanisms to maintain vitality far longer than most plants. Does this mean that the species itself has been shaped not just for survival through generations, but for the endurance of each individual tree across centuries? And yet, despite the science, a sense of mystery persists. Ancient cultures often regarded the ginkgo as a sacred tree, a bridge between the human and the eternal. In parts of China, ginkgo trees were planted near temples, perhaps not merely for their beauty, but because they seemed to embody something beyond the ordinary, a kind of steadfastness that echoed through generations. Could it be that early observers, without the tools of modern science, nevertheless recognized in the ginkgo an echo of a deeper truth, one rooted in its Jurassic heritage? Even today, its story challenges us. How many other ancient lineages have been lost, their secrets erased by time, while this single species endures? Is the ginkgo's survival a rare fluke, or a sign that we have underestimated the ways life can adapt to an ever-changing planet? Might its longevity hint at evolutionary pathways we have yet to discover? Pathways that could one day inform our understanding of resilience, aging, and survival in an unstable world? The ginkgo's leaves still unfurl each spring in the same distinctive fan shapes they wore when the first stegosaurs walked the earth. Each autumn, they still fall in sudden golden cascades, carpeting the ground as if marking the passage of another cycle in an unbroken chain. Somewhere in that continuity lies an answer. But for now, it remains locked within the silent heartwood of a tree that has seen ages come and go. And so we are left to wonder, in a world where almost nothing lasts forever, how has this ancient survivor kept its place? What exactly is the true origin of its extraordinary longevity? Beneath the dappled shade of towering conifers, in the humid warmth of a Jurassic forest, the air hums with a low, constant vibration. Tiny wings catch glimmers of filtered sunlight, shimmering like fragments of glass in the green gloom. Beetles the size of a fingernail crawl along the bark, their glossy shells reflecting flecks of gold. Delicate lacewings drift in lazy arcs, while dragonflies skim over still pools, their eyes catching every ripple of movement below. In this prehistoric world dominated by immense dinosaurs, it is the small, fragile creatures that weave the invisible threads of life. The Jurassic period was not only the age of giants, it was also the stage for an extraordinary expansion of insect life. Fossils preserved in amber and fine-grained sediments reveal a complex and vibrant cast. Early flies, beetles, wasps, and moth-like creatures, each occupying its own niche. These insects, though often overlooked in popular depictions of the era, played essential roles in shaping the ecosystems of their time. They were pollinators, decomposers, prey, and sometimes predators, influencing the survival and behavior of far larger animals. But the full extent of their impact remains elusive. How much of the Jurassic world was truly driven by these silent, buzzing architects of the land? Paleontologists agree on certain fundamentals. Some Jurassic insects likely pollinated gymnosperms such as cycads, ginkgos, and conifers long before the first flowering plants emerged. Others broke down decaying plant matter, recycling nutrients back into the soil and sustaining the base of the food chain. And inevitably, many became food themselves, fluttering morsels for early birds, pterosaurs, and small predatory dinosaurs. Without these minute organisms, the energy flow of the ecosystem would have faltered. Yet, despite this, the fossil record of Jurassic insects remains patchy, leaving large gaps in our understanding. One puzzle lies in the timing of certain evolutionary leaps. Fossil evidence suggests that some insects developed highly specialized mouthparts far earlier than expected, structures seemingly adapted for extracting nectar-like fluids, even though flowering plants had yet to appear. What then were they feeding on? Were they tapping into the sugary secretions of ancient seed cones, or piercing the protective layers of plant ovules? Could it be that insect-plant coevolution began long before the familiar bloom of angiosperms, hinting at a lost chapter in botanical history? Another mystery surrounds the apparent distribution of insect diversity. While some fossil sites reveal a surprising abundance of species, others, despite being rich in plant and dinosaur remains, show almost no trace of insect life. Was this a quirk of preservation, or does it point to a genuine unevenness in insect populations across different Jurassic habitats? If the latter, could regional climates, volcanic activity, or even competition with other invertebrates have shaped the patchwork of insect communities? Some researchers take the question further, proposing that insects may have played a hidden role in driving evolutionary pressures on dinosaurs themselves. Small, agile theropods may have evolved certain hunting strategies not solely for chasing lizards or small mammals, but also for snapping up swarms of winged prey. Conversely, massive herbivores like Camarasaurus or Diplodocus may have migrated in part to escape the seasonal onslaught of biting and parasitic insects, much as modern animals do today. If true, these tiny creatures could have influenced the movements, behaviors, and even the body structures of the largest animals to ever walk the earth. There are more speculative notions as well. Some paleobotanists suggest that insects may have contributed to the spread of certain plant groups by transporting spores, seeds, or resin across distances far greater than wind or water alone could manage. Could the global distribution of iconic Jurassic plants like ginkgos or cycads have been partly the work of these airborne couriers? And in turn, might those plants have subtly shaped insect evolution, leading to specialized forms we can only faintly recognize in fossils? Amber inclusions from later periods offer tantalizing glimpses: a mosquito frozen mid-flight, a beetle trapped among droplets of resin. But the Jurassic equivalent is far rarer. Most of what we know comes from flattened impressions in shale or limestone, ghostly outlines of wings and legs pressed into stone for millions of years. These fragile records invite more questions than they answer. What colors did these insects display to attract mates or ward off predators? Did they hum and buzz in complex soundscapes, as insects do today? And how many vanished lineages, perfectly adapted to Jurassic conditions, left no trace at all? In trying to reconstruct these ecosystems, scientists must walk a careful line between deduction and imagination. The insect world of the Jurassic was almost certainly richer and more intricate than the fragmentary evidence suggests. Yet the scarcity of direct fossil proof leaves much to inference. In the absence of complete data, we are left to piece together a mosaic from scattered tiles, knowing that much of the original picture will remain forever hidden. Perhaps the greatest intrigue lies in the fact that these smallest of creatures may have held the strings that subtly guided the fates of the largest. In the towering shadows of Brachiosaurus and the gliding arcs of Pteranodon, the true shapers of the land may have been no bigger than a thumbnail, working quietly in the undergrowth and the canopy. If we could step back into that world and listen beyond the thunder of dinosaur footsteps, perhaps the dominant sound would not be the roar of predators, but the endless hum of wings. The fossilized remains of those wings still whisper their secrets, but only faintly. How much of the Jurassic's great evolutionary story hinges on a drama we cannot fully see? And if the insects of that distant age were so crucial, how different might the history of life have been if they had taken another path? Beneath a dim and brooding sky, the surface of a shallow Jurassic sea lies eerily still. Once these waters teemed with life. Shoals of fish, darting ichthyosaurs, swaying forests of kelp-like algae. But now the silence feels unnatural. The shallows are littered with lifeless shells, and the once bright corals are ghostly white. Far inland, in the conifer forests, the air is heavy with the scent of decay. Something has disturbed the rhythm of this ancient world, and its cause remains one of the Jurassic period's most enduring enigmas. The Jurassic is remembered as a time of flourishing biodiversity. Towering sauropods roaming vast floodplains, predatory theropods stalking their prey, seas filled with marine reptiles and ammonites. Yet buried within this era's long timeline are sudden interruptions, moments when life faltered, ecosystems contracted, and certain lineages vanished. These are the Jurassic extinction events, quieter and less dramatic than the catastrophic end Cretaceous asteroid strike, but no less mysterious. One of the most notable is the extinction pulse at the boundary between the early and middle Jurassic, around 174 million years ago. Fossil evidence points to significant losses among marine life, including many species of ammonites and bivalves. On land, some plant groups and smaller vertebrates also disappeared. The cause? Many scientists point to the Karoo-Ferrar Large Igneous Province, a massive outpouring of volcanic rock stretching from what is now southern Africa to Antarctica. Such eruptions would have released enormous volumes of carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide, warming the planet, altering ocean chemistry, and disrupting the food chain. But was volcanism the sole culprit, or just one thread in a web of environmental changes? The late Jurassic also bears traces of ecological upheaval. Some regions show a sudden turnover in dominant dinosaur species, with familiar predators like certain allosaurids declining, and new forms appearing. In the oceans, certain marine reptiles, once widespread, vanish from the record, replaced by newcomers seemingly adapted to altered conditions. Could these shifts have been gradual evolutionary replacements, or signs of more abrupt environmental stress? Geological clues hint at periods of oceanic anoxia, times when large stretches of the seafloor were starved of oxygen. In such conditions, marine life collapses from the bottom up, as invertebrates die off and the predators that feed on them follow. The triggers for these events could have ranged from altered currents and changing sea levels to vast releases of nutrients fueling algal blooms. Yet here, too, the evidence is frustratingly incomplete. The fossil record is patchy, and what appears as a sudden extinction might, in reality, be a gap in preservation. Speculative ideas push the boundaries further. Could asteroid or comet impacts, smaller than the one that ended the Cretaceous, have caused localized but devastating effects during the Jurassic? While no confirmed impact sites from this period match the scale of the Chicxulub crater, a few candidates have been proposed. These include circular geological features in remote regions that some argue could be eroded impact structures. If any of them are proven to date to the Jurassic, they could help explain abrupt regional or global disturbances. Climate instability is another possible thread. Though the Jurassic is often depicted as a uniformly warm, humid greenhouse world, evidence from isotopic studies suggests fluctuations in temperature and precipitation. Periods of cooling could have contracted tropical zones, while intense warming might have stressed polar ecosystems. If such changes occurred rapidly on geological timescales, they could have fractured food webs, especially for species with narrow environmental tolerances. And then there is the question of biological competition. Could the rise of new, better adapted species have indirectly pushed others toward extinction? The spread of early birds, for example, may have challenged small pterosaurs for food resources. Similarly, the diversification of certain predatory marine reptiles may have placed pressure on older lineages. Such biological pressures, combined with environmental shifts, could have driven subtle but significant waves of extinction. Some researchers even speculate about factors not yet widely explored. Could fluctuations in Earth's magnetic field during the Jurassic have affected climate patterns or increased surface radiation? Could tectonic shifts altering continental positions have subtly changed ocean circulation in ways that starved some regions of life-giving nutrients? These possibilities remain at the edge of scientific discussion, intriguing but unproven. What makes the Jurassic extinction events so enigmatic is not only their causes, but their scale. They were not total global collapses. Life continued, often rebounding with new forms. Yet each event appears to have left its mark, pruning the evolutionary tree in ways that shaped the path toward the Cretaceous. These were turning points, moments when the future of entire lineages hung in the balance, and small changes could ripple forward for tens of millions of years. Today, in the exposed rock faces of places like the Morrison Formation in North America or the marine limestone cliffs of Europe, these interruptions are preserved as subtle shifts in fossil layers. A bed rich with one kind of ammonite gives way abruptly to another, or the bones of a familiar dinosaur vanish, replaced by new skeletal forms. To the untrained eye, these transitions might seem unremarkable, but to paleontologists, they are the whispers of ancient crises. If we could step back into those moments, what would we see? Would the skies darken with volcanic ash, the seas turn murky and foul-smelling, the forests wither under a relentless sun? Or would the changes be slower, creeping into the lives of creatures unaware of their impending disappearance? The answers remain locked within stone, scattered in fragments across continents. The Jurassic extinction events invite us to look beyond the obvious dramas of Earth's history and to consider that even in times of apparent abundance, life walks a narrow path between flourishing and collapse. And so we are left to wonder, what delicate chain of events, still hidden from our understanding, set these ancient worlds on a course toward loss? A soft mist clings to the surface of a shallow Jurassic wetland, its waters dark and still beneath a canopy of towering conifers and cycads. Dragonflies as wide as a man's hand hover above lily-like pads, and somewhere in the reeds, ripples betray the movement of something unseen. In such an environment, one might expect to find the quiet rulers of freshwater ecosystems, frogs, salamanders, and their ancient relatives, slipping between water and land as they had for millions of years. And yet, when we turn to the fossil record of the Jurassic period, a strange silence greets us. These amphibians, so abundant before and after, seem to have stepped back from history, leaving behind what scientists call the Amphibian Gap. The gap is not a total absence. Here and there, fossils of Jurassic amphibians appear, isolated bones, rare skeletons, impressions in ancient lakebed sediments. But compared to the wealth of material from the Triassic before and the Cretaceous after, the Jurassic record is thin, patchy, and oddly inconsistent across regions. Entire lineages, like certain prehistoric salamanders and temnospondyls, fade from the record with little sign of transition. Even frogs, which today inhabit every continent except Antarctica, leave behind a frustratingly sparse trail. The question is not merely one of missing bones. Paleontologists know that amphibians often leave delicate fossils, requiring very specific conditions for preservation. Still, the scarcity is puzzling when one considers the sheer number of wetland habitats that must have existed during this warm, humid era. The Jurassic climate, with its vast river systems, floodplains, and shallow lakes, seems tailor-made for amphibian life. So, why does the record give us so little? The mainstream explanation often begins with geology. Much of the Jurassic rock preserved today represents environments, like deserts, upland plains, and deep marine basins, where amphibians were less likely to live or be fossilized. The swamps and floodplains of the time may have been located in areas where sediments have since eroded away, subducted, or remain buried. In other words, the animals may have been there all along. We simply haven't found where they were preserved. Yet even in regions where preservation conditions are favorable, the amphibian record remains meager. In formations famous for their rich diversity, like the Morrison in North America or the Solnhofen limestones of what is now Germany, amphibian remains appear as rare footnotes. Some researchers have suggested ecological competition as a factor. Could the rise of new predators, such as advanced theropod dinosaurs or early crocodilians, have reduced amphibian numbers by dominating the waterways? Or perhaps the flourishing of small mammals and reptiles during the Jurassic competed for the same invertebrate prey that amphibians depended on. Other hypotheses point to environmental change. Though the Jurassic is generally seen as a greenhouse world, it was not without climatic shifts. Periods of drying may have fragmented wetland habitats, isolating populations and leading to local extinctions. Seasonal extremes in some regions could have made amphibian breeding cycles less reliable. If even a small chain of events disrupted their delicate life cycles, tadpoles failing to metamorphose, breeding pools drying too soon, entire populations could have collapsed without leaving much trace. There is also the possibility of evolutionary bottlenecks. Perhaps amphibians during the Jurassic underwent a period of low diversity, with fewer species adapted to a narrower range of conditions. In such a scenario, even a minor environmental stress could have caused sudden declines. The survivors may have been confined to limited geographic regions whose fossil records are still hidden beneath the earth. More speculative ideas wander further from the safety of current consensus. Could widespread volcanic activity, such as that associated with the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province in the earlier Mesozoic, have had lingering effects on global amphibian populations into the Jurassic? Amphibians, with their permeable skin and reliance on clean, fresh water, are particularly sensitive to toxins and changes in pH. Even low levels of environmental contamination from ash fallout or mineral leaching could have reduced their numbers. Some have even proposed disease as a factor, an ancient fungal or microbial pathogen sweeping through populations long before humans ever recorded such plagues. And then there is the unsettling question of whether the gap represents not just a missing chapter in the fossil record, but a true decline, a time when amphibians nearly lost their foothold in Earth's ecosystems. If so, what force kept them from vanishing entirely? And what lessons might this hidden struggle hold about resilience in the face of environmental change? In recent years, the search for answers has led paleontologists to remote and often inhospitable field sites. Isolated lake beds in China, volcanic crater lakes in Patagonia, and obscure outcrops in Africa are yielding tantalizing glimpses. A frog skeleton here, a salamander vertebra there. Each new discovery raises fresh questions. Are we looking at rare survivors in otherwise hostile conditions, or fragments of once thriving populations we have yet to uncover? The Amphibian Gap remains a reminder that the fossil record is as much about absence as presence. Between the Triasic's abundance and the Cretaceous's renewed diversity lies a shadowed interval, a quiet in the chorus of life that once echoed across Jurassic wetlands. Whether this silence is the result of geological chance, ecological change, or a deeper, more mysterious cause, we cannot yet say. Perhaps somewhere, buried in the rocks we have yet to split open, the missing voices of the Jurassic's amphibians still wait to be heard. The question lingers like the mist over an ancient pond. Were they hiding, thriving unseen, or teetering on the edge of extinction in a world that was rapidly changing around them? Beneath the rolling swells of a Jurassic sea, sunlight filters down in trembling beams, fading into a cool blue haze. Schools of fish scatter at the passing shadow of an ichthyosaur, a sleek, dolphin-shaped reptile, its skin dappled with shifting light. With a flick of its crescent tail, it glides effortlessly through the water, eyes wide and unblinking, scanning for prey. But the story of these ancient marine reptiles is not only one of hunting and survival, it is also one of reproduction, a subject still shrouded in mystery after nearly 2 centuries of study. Fossils reveal that ichthyosaurs were viviparous. They gave birth to live young rather than laying eggs. In fact, some of the most striking specimens ever uncovered are those frozen in the act of birth, tiny skeletons emerging tail first from the body of the mother. This detail alone offers a remarkable insight. Tail-first delivery would have prevented newborns from drowning during birth, a crucial adaptation for fully aquatic life. But beyond these moments preserved in stone, our understanding of how ichthyosaurs reproduced, nurtured their young, and ensured the survival of their species remains surprisingly incomplete. Mainstream interpretations start with comparisons to modern marine mammals. Like dolphins and whales, ichthyosaurs may have formed social groups, with females giving birth in shallow, protected waters where predators were fewer. The presence of juveniles in certain fossil-rich sites hints at the existence of ancient calving grounds, places where generations may have gathered to give their young the best possible start. But were these migrations seasonal? Did females return to the same bays year after year, guided by memory or instinct? The rocks have yet to give a definitive answer. The question of parental care is even more elusive. In living marine reptiles such as sea turtles, young are left to fend for themselves almost immediately. Marine mammals, however, often nurse and protect their offspring for extended periods. Where did ichthyosaurs fall on this spectrum? Their large eyes and streamlined bodies suggest a life of constant motion in open waters, which might have made prolonged parental care challenging. Yet some paleontologists speculate that young ichthyosaurs may have stayed close to their mothers for at least the first stages of life, learning to hunt and navigate in a world of shifting currents and lurking predators. Dietary evidence adds another layer to the puzzle. Juvenile ichthyosaur fossils often have stomach contents showing small fish and soft-bodied prey, suggesting a gradual transition to larger, faster quarry as they matured. Was this dietary progression taught by example, or was it entirely instinctive? If mothers played a role in guiding young toward suitable hunting grounds, it would imply a degree of social complexity we have not yet confirmed. The mystery deepens when we look at ichthyosaur diversity. Some species were enormous, with adults exceeding 20 meters in length. Others were barely the size of a modern porpoise. Did these differences reflect different reproductive strategies? Larger species may have birthed fewer, more developed young capable of surviving in harsher environments, while smaller species might have produced larger litters of more vulnerable offspring. Unfortunately, the fossil record rarely preserves enough individuals from a single species to determine whether these theories hold true. There are also hints, mere whispers in the data, that some ichthyosaurs may have practiced extended gestation, similar to modern sharks, with embryos developing slowly within the mother's body until they were fully ready to face the open ocean. If so, such a strategy would have come with risks. A prolonged pregnancy could make the mother more vulnerable to predators or environmental changes. Yet it could also have given her offspring a significant survival advantage. Some speculative theories venture further still. Could ichthyosaurs have engaged in complex mating displays, perhaps involving changes in skin coloration or coordinated swimming patterns, as modern dolphins and cuttlefish do? No direct evidence survives, but the possibility cannot be entirely dismissed, especially given their large eyes and likely excellent vision, which would have been advantageous for visual communication in clear, shallow waters. Others suggest that certain ichthyosaur populations may have been migratory, crossing entire oceans to mate in specific locations, their movements timed to ancient climatic cycles now recorded only in layers of sediment. Even the fossil evidence we do have raises as many questions as it answers. In some Jurassic deposits, pregnant females vastly outnumber males, leading to speculation that these were indeed seasonal breeding grounds. In others, juvenile ichthyosaurs are curiously absent, implying that births occurred far from the sites where adults hunted. It is possible that the most important birthing areas of the Jurassic seas lie buried under sediment in places we have yet to explore, or beneath the ocean itself, forever hidden from view. And then there is the matter of extinction. Ichthyosaurs thrived for much of the Mesozoic, but by the late Cretaceous they were gone. Could changes in their reproductive strategies or the environments that supported them have played a role in their decline? If breeding grounds were disrupted by shifting sea levels, altered currents, or competition from newly evolved predators, the delicate balance that sustained their populations could have been broken. Today, the skeletons of ichthyosaurs rest in museum halls and stone slabs, their bones arranged in lifelike poses, some still curled protectively around the remains of their unborn young. They are silent now, yet their very preservation in moments of such vulnerability offers a haunting glimpse into a world we can only partially reconstruct. Were these creatures devoted parents, guiding their calves through the dangers of the Jurassic oceans? Or were they solitary travelers, trusting the vastness of the sea to scatter and shelter their young? The truth drifts somewhere between evidence and imagination. The sea has given us fragments, bones, embryos, the frozen moment of birth, but not the whole story. And so the question lingers like the shadow of an ancient fin breaking the surface. What secrets of life, love, and survival did the ichthyosaurs carry with them into extinction? High above a Jurassic coastline, the wind rolls in from the open sea, carrying the scent of salt and the cry of distant waves. Against the pale sky, a shadow glides, broad wings stretched taut, their span rivaling that of a modern light aircraft. The creature tilts in the breeze, banking with a grace that seems almost effortless. This is a pterosaur, a master of ancient airways, and its wings are more than mere limbs. They are intricate, living membranes, structures that have puzzled paleontologists for over a century. The bones are familiar enough: elongated forelimbs, with a single, vastly extended fourth finger supporting the wing. But the flesh that once stretched between these bones is gone, leaving only the faintest impressions in a few rare fossils. It is here, in these ghostly outlines, that the real mystery lies. What was the pterosaur's wing membrane truly made of? And how did it allow creatures weighing tens of kilograms or more to take flight in an age when no bird had yet taken to the skies. Mainstream interpretations begin with comparisons to the only living animals that use membranous wings today: bats. Bat wings are composed of skin, muscle, nerves, and blood vessels, forming a living surface that can flex, stretch, and heal. Some pterosaur fossils, particularly those preserved in fine-grained limestone, reveal faint traces of internal fibers, structures paleontologists call actinofibrils. These fibers may have reinforced the wing membrane, preventing it from tearing under the stress of flight and allowing for subtle adjustments mid-air. In this view, the pterosaur wing was a highly engineered biological surface, capable of sustaining long glides over ocean currents or agile maneuvers over coastal cliffs. Yet even the best preserved fossils raise questions. Some specimens show evidence of layers within the membrane, possibly collagen, possibly keratin-like material. If so, these layers could have offered additional strength and resistance to environmental damage, suggesting that pterosaur wings were more durable than those of bats. But why would evolution favor such complexity? Was it purely a response to the demands of large size and long-distance travel, or did it serve purposes we have yet to imagine? In some exceptional fossils, preserved in what was once an ancient lagoon, the outlines of blood vessels and even microscopic cellular structures hint at a living wing rich with sensory feedback. If pterosaurs could feel changes in wind pressure directly through their membranes, they might have been able to adjust their flight with extraordinary precision, something modern gliders and drones still struggle to replicate. But these impressions are rare and often fragmentary, leaving room for debate. Were such adaptations universal among pterosaurs, or limited to certain species specialized for particular environments? There is also the question of attachment. In most reconstructions, the wing membrane stretches from the elongated fourth finger to the side of the body, sometimes incorporating the hind limb. But in others, the membrane seems to extend all the way to the ankle, or even the tail, forming a broader surface. Did different pterosaur lineages experiment with different wing designs? And if so, how did these variations affect their flight style, hunting strategy, or migratory behavior? Some researchers have proposed that pterosaur wings may have had a thin, muscular layer beneath the surface, enabling fine-tuned adjustments in shape during flight, something no modern bat or bird can do to the same extent. If true, this would make them not just passive gliders, but active masters of aerodynamics, capable of folding, flexing, and cambering their wings like living aircraft. Others suggest that the membranes may have been covered in pycnofibers, hair-like filaments that could have provided insulation, protection, or even aerodynamic advantages. Fossil evidence for pycnofibers on the wings is contested, but if they were present, they could hint at warm-blooded physiology, fueling the long, energy-demanding flights some pterosaurs likely undertook. Speculative ideas reach further still. Could the composition of pterosaur membranes have varied by age or season? Juveniles might have had softer, more elastic wings, allowing for clumsy first flights and rapid growth, while adults developed tougher, more weather-resistant structures. Some paleontologists even wonder whether the membranes could have been partially translucent, shimmering in the sunlight like the wings of certain insects. If so, might coloration or patterns in the membrane have been used for mating displays, species recognition, or even to startle predators? The challenge lies in the nature of fossilization. Soft tissues are rarely preserved, and when they are, their original biochemical composition is almost always altered beyond recognition. Advanced imaging techniques and chemical analyses have begun to reveal more detail, traces of proteins, pigments, and fiber alignments. But the data is still too sparse to form a definitive picture. Every new fossil discovery has the potential to upend previous assumptions, showing wings thicker, thinner or differently structured than we had imagined. Then there are the evolutionary questions. Pterosaurs appear in the fossil record already fully adapted for flight, with no clear transitional forms showing the gradual evolution of their wing membranes. Did their unique structure evolve from simple skin flaps used for gliding, as some theories suggest? Or did they emerge suddenly in evolutionary terms, perhaps in response to a changing environment or the opening of new ecological niches in the skies of the late Triassic and Jurassic? In the end, we are left with impressions in stone and inferences drawn from living analogs, shadows of a biological marvel that once filled the skies. The pterosaur wing membrane was more than a surface. It was a living, dynamic organ that defined the creature's entire way of life. And yet, its exact nature, its texture, resilience, sensory capacity, remains just beyond our grasp. When we stand before those delicate fossil impressions, the stone holding the ghost of a wing that has not felt wind in over 150 million years, one can't help but wonder, what would it have been like to stand on that Jurassic shoreline, to look up and to see the sunlight catch on the living skin of a pterosaur's wing, flexing, shimmering, and alive in a way no fossil can ever fully reveal?